Hello, Hobgoblin.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
I need to assemble a real microphone.
Okay, yeah, you sound a little bit funny. What's up, Greg?
Not much.
Hey guys.
What's up?
Hey Nick, how you doing? It's been a minute.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. Just got back from a trip like half hour ago.
Well, damn. I like it.
hmm
Where'd you go?
Committed. Just a place called Bristol, just down south. And
Okay.
I've been there.
They have a FIFA team. They used to be bad, right? Or they are bad.
I think they are bad. I'm not sure they've ever been good. I'm not sure
Okay.
that I'm not a big football guy, but Bristol FC, I guess, is the name of
When
them.
I play the soccer game, I always take the worst teams.
Oh yeah, okay.
Try to make them the best.
It looks like then.
So you're a big fan of Manchester and Liverpool, then? Those teams fucking suck.
Hey man,
Uh,
some of the best teams, right? You're sort of you're trying to troll me, but I'm not really that bothered. But like, it's not a factual statement.
So it's working.
There's also a rivalry there, right? So you're supposed to choose one or the other to suck.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm saying they both suck.
I don't know.
Well,
they're
no,
within
'cause
like
there's-
20 miles of each other. They're like the
Hence
same
rivalry.
team.
It's funny though because there's two teams in Liverpool. There's Liverpool and Everton, and then there's two teams in Manchester. There's Manchester United and Manchester City. So there's an inter-Liverpool rivalry and an inter-Manchester rivalry, but then there's also like a Manchester and Liverpool rivalry. But the funny thing is, like, say if Manchester United are playing Liverpool, if you support Everton, which are based in Liverpool, you'd want Manchester United to win because you hate Liverpool more than you hate Manchester, if you know what I mean. You hate the other team within your own city more.
Right, than the team next door.
Yeah.
Right.
So like you're rooting for your opposite town, but
this is very common for like sports, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you guys were into college football, like this is speaking. Right,
Right.
like Alabama and Auburn are within miles of each other, right? Support one or the other. Are
mhm.
definitely cheering for LSU, who you hate, to beat the other one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just because you hate your own internal rivalry more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it happened in like if it's even worse when it's like the Champions League final, like the European Cup, and it'll be like Liverpool against like some Spanish team or whatever, and half of Liverpool are supporting the Spanish team just because they can't stand to see Liverpool actually win the European Cup. Just makes no sense.
Okay, mic check. Is this sound any different?
Yeah, you're
Oh, you sound loud.
you're loud.
I can
now.
turn-
You back.
Turn it
No,
down.
no, you stay where you are, and I gotta like turn you down in my head.
No, come down a
Yeah,
little
I
bit,
can-
Ryan. Come
I
down a
can
little.
I can turn the gain down a bit. Is
Yeah, you're too loud.
that better?
A little bit better. A
Okay.
little more.
Test.
That's better.
More.
Here, let me just throw on some compression filters so it doesn't keep redlining, but we should be good.
You're just saying words now, Neil. Compression filters.
I thought we'd established that there wasn't a compression filter.
But
Somehow I
for
still managed to
Zoom,
blow out.
I'm sorry, for OBS, there's a compression filter.
Then how do I manage to blow out the viewers' ears every couple of weeks?
Because I don't have a compression filter on right now, but I normally do. This is a new
What?
scene in OBS, so that doesn't have any audio filters on it yet.
God, OBS has so many tools in it. I have to learn how to use this tool one day. Like me and my bum ass has just like the most basic scenes you've ever seen. It's like face, camera, game, go.
I like this little overplay you've got here, Neil.
Oh, thank you. I worked very hard on it.
Well, that's pretty sweet.
All right,
Are
give me
mics
a
live?
yeah. Mics are
Yeah.
hot. Give me a quick rundown here. Nicholas, would you count to 3?
1, 2, 3.
Ryan, would you count to 3?
1, 2, 3.
Greg, would you count to 3?
Un, dos, tres.
All right. Greg is
There we-
quiet somehow magically. That's never happened in the history of the world
What?
before.
What?
You are
I'm
way too quiet, Greg. Oh, it's
Sounds fine on
that's
my
because
end.
we play HOTS and I have you down at like 20%. All right, give me another 1, 2, 3, Greg.
1, 2, 3.
All right, let me bring you up a little bit more. I can bring you back to 100% now. Okay. Woo!
I am too loud and hot. I'm sorry. I just get so excited and people start running away from me while I'm trying to heal them, and then I have to tell them to get the hell back here.
That is
All right,
I'm gonna go get my coffee.
I'm gonna go make my coffee too. We'll be right back.
All right.
Mine's already made. I just have to collect it. Neal's gonna be
Right.
gone for like 10 minutes.
If you
Alright.
don't grind your coffee, we're gonna be sad. Like somebody needs to take it
It's
on the spot.
pre-ground. It's pre-ground. I am
Oh my
ashamed.
god. I
Yeah.
can't even drink that piss.
I miss you,
No,
Nick.
I drink pre-ground coffee. I'm just trying to fill Sean's void.
I love it.
The worst thing in HOTS though, when you're the healer, right, and they run away, is not only do they die because you're trying to get in range of them, but they're out of range, but then you die because you've had to like run into the enemy team to try and get in range, and then you both die. That's oh man.
That has definitely happened to me. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I remember being Lieutenant Morales, and I was trying to keep my Q on people, and I'm not a very experienced HOTS player, right? Like I'm a basic. And I had never seen Artanis like do his little zoom in and zoom back thing. And so all of a sudden, Artanis, who looked to be low on health and was like getting healed, I was like, okay, he's gonna be fine. Suddenly zooms like way deep behind enemy lines, and I'm like, oh god, I have to go save him. And I run forward, and Artanis zooms back to safety, and suddenly I'm just surrounded by enemies. I'm like, what happened?
Oh my god, that sounds tragic.
It was painful. It hurt my soul the first time it happened.
So how have you been, Greg? What have you been up to?
I was doing really, really, really well until last night, and my car just like died.
Ooh.
Fortunately,
shit.
I was sitting in like a parking lot, basically, and I just couldn't turn it over. I had no idea what happened. We thought it was the battery. We thought it was a lot of things. I got a friend to come try to jump us, and nothing took. So I had to call the insurance to get a tow, and that took like an hour and a half. Because of course, it's never easy to just have a tow truck show up.
Yeah.
It's got to be a pain. So yeah, I dealt with that last night, and I am officially carless at the moment. Until I can get the shop to open up on Monday and take a look at it. I'm hoping it's just a battery, old, maybe an alternator, which is expensiver, but not that bad.
Sucks, man. That sounds like a bad time.
It was kind of shitty, but I was having a pretty good run of it for that. So
Yeah, you'll be all right. You'll be all right.
yeah.
Mhm.
So if we got topics now, like what's the deal?
Oh, Greg is our topic man. Greg volunteered to create topics for us.
Yeah, I kind of thought that it would be really nice to have a bunch of BS, right? We could talk and chit chat, have Sean and I discuss Wheel of Time because that would be nostalgic.
Thank God
and-
Sean's not here today.
And then once we were done BSing, I could throw out a couple of kind of D&D related topics.
D&D
hopefully-
related topics.
D&D. I
Nice.
thought D&D was off limits.
No.
Oh, is it
D&D 's
off
never
limits?
I don't
No,
know.
it's
I
not,
kind of
surely.
thought we were a D&D channel.
He was
so,
joking.
like,
It was
I
a joke.
joke.
It was a joke that went way over your head, Greg.
Sorry, I'm in like moderator mode, so I didn't catch it. I'm sorry.
Well, it wasn't entirely
I
a
was gonna
joke.
say I don't think it was a joke. I think it
Oh.
went over Neal's head.
Oh, I guess it
I-
did.
I think the gravity of the statement went over Neal's head.
Yeah, I like to hedge my bets. Everything I say is like half a
Mm.
joke.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Depending on how it lands, I'll just pretend I meant to do it that way.
Well, we
That's
could
very
definitely
cynical, right?
do
The classic, I
non-D&D
like you.
related.
Oh, wait, haha, just kidding. You didn't like me back.
Exactly.
Like all those I don't know if you see this subreddit on Reddit. It's like, I don't know, creepy PMs or something like that. It's always like guys messaging girls for like naked pics or whatever. And at the end, they're like, I never liked you anyway, you fat slut. It's like, oh yeah, you've just spent the last 5 days badgering this woman.
Right.
I don't know. Where does this picture come from, Neal?
I
trying to
made
interpret
this
it.
fucking picture. I labored over this for hours.
Fuck
Not
off,
the
you didn't
artwork.
draw that.
Oh, the
Yeah, that's
artwork.
that's
That's
Matthew
Matthew Berger. Yeah.
But he painstakingly cropped it out.
I did.
The
I
right
made
aspect.
I made a box. I put a stroke on the box. I put a clipping layer on the clipping layer mask on the box, and then I moved the picture until it looked good.
Yeah.
I think this artwork is this from Arcadia East,
It
or is it just a random?
It is the only
Damn.
bit of artwork from Arcadia East.
So it is potentially related to Odam.
No,
Maybe.
Odam is not taking. Odam takes place in
No, it's in
Drekis.
Drekis, right?
Oh, then what's Arcadia East? Is it
It's
like
a
some
new
super secret
landmass.
new campaign?
Yeah, it's a new landmass that I've been working on, and I don't have a campaign for it yet. But I've been building a campaign for it in my brain, and it just doesn't have a home. So I'm looking for a home for a new campaign. I'm looking for someone to
hear
pay
a
me money
time
for
slot.
it.
Yeah,
I hear a time slot may have just opened up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Sorry,
it.
no spoilers.
No, I guess Chit Chat should be full of spoilers. I should probably put something on the postcard that says
Okay,
we're
good.
going to talk about spoilers.
So what happened, Neil? Did you know you were going to get them, or was it a nice surprise?
I wouldn't say it was a nice surprise, but it was a
Oh,
surprise.
shut up. You always love it.
All right, guys, I've been looking to kill these people off for months. This fucking group of players, they're all such assholes. They always give me such crap for sleeping in and missing the first hour and a half of the show. How dare they?
Nah, I don't think that's your motivation. I don't think it's like you want to get rid of the game. I just think there has to be something within you wanting to kill the players, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work. There has to be something in there.
I don't know what sort of crazy psychology you live in, but that's not the case for me.
Yeah, let's never let Nick DM.
Yeah.
Or we need to find a game system that supports that, right? Like we need to find a game system where the DM has to be an antagonist, like Argon or
Argon?
Cricket. Argon
Crickets,
is
yeah,
a-
Is that a gas?
Argon is a very interesting game. Or maybe Argon, I think. It's a very interesting game from one of the people kind of behind Blades in the Dark types, where you play heroes from ancient Greece, like the mythological version, and you have favors of the gods, and you fight each other for favor and for riches and spoil. It's a game based around your individual character against the others, not in like a fight to the death, but in a bid to gain greater favor and or like
That sounds cool.
larger power. Yeah, it's really neat. It's getting like a remaster or something. I'm excited to see that come out.
Pretty sweet. I like it. But what's going on in this picture then, Neil? So is that a dragon's tail?
I don't know. What do you think it is?
Let's steal as many spoilers out of this as we
Yeah.
can. Right? We gotta break this down.
I think it's a tentacle. Tentacle monsters.
Ooh.
Ooh. What's the name of that monster that you killed in the original roleplay? Not Gregor, but like the character he played after that. It's like got a big eye and loads of tentacles and it lives in the water.
Oh, a
That's
deep
sick
spawn.
monster. That's a sick
I don't think
monster.
it has a big eye, does it?
No. No, it does
I think
not.
you're mixing it up with beholders.
Yes.
Well,
Or something.
no. I know what a beholder is, Ryan. Thank you. Never been more insulted. That bloody hell.
I didn't say you didn't know. You're just kind of mixing monsters in your
Okay.
imagination.
Mm.
No, I'm sure there's a monster with a big eye that's not a beholder that also has tentacles. Sounds
I'm
like a beholder,
sure.
but
Ooh,
know.
I mean, there's a
tendril, says McTacky.
there's
I like it better.
a lion that's basically a wheel of legs. Okay, so there's a bunch of weird monsters out there.
Oh my god, can we fight that? Like, can you just like force that into Arcadia the next time we play? Like, it's just somewhere like on the random encounter table. It would normally have been 6 kobolds, but this time it's a lion with a wheel of legs.
Yeah, man.
could
What
just-
is it called?
we could do like
a
an
boar?
arena game.
Here, I'm just gonna link it in.
Okay.
I'm gonna link it in Twitch chat for lack of a better place. A
That's
boar
actually-
demon.
One of my favorite things to do to come up with new monsters is to just like stick multiple monsters together. So like the rat cleaver encounter was just like, okay, instead of fighting 2 were-rats, let's just attach 2 were-rats into one creature and you'll fight a 4-armed were-rat.
Oh, nice. Is that where it came
That's
from?
probably where this came from. Instead of an encounter with 6 lions, we'll just attach 6 lions together, add up all their hit die, add up all their attacks. It seems like he's being really creative. But no.
I like to take inspiration from actual kind of mythology, right? One of my favorite encounters I ran recently was a giant hair demon from Japanese mythology, and I basically just scour the monster manual for monsters that have similar effects, stitch them all together until you have like CR based effects that come from all over the monster. They kind of simulate.
Greg, you're cutting out for me.
Am I cutting out?
too.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Well, I mean, it's only fine if we don't care what he's saying. I mean,
we can get the gist of it. Yeah. In other news, I have remembered my Twitch password, so I think I'm in chat. I'm not just watching.
Woo!
That's wonderful.
Is there any
Chat was a
monsters that
little-
you've wanted to put in a campaign, Neal, that you've never been able to?
I've been wanting to put you
It's
in a
like two
campaign.
badass.
You're a monster.
I'm not. I've been in lots of campaigns, thanks. Oh, you mean me personally, though? That would be...
Yeah, you
That'd
guys
be
run
horrendous.
across a wild Nick.
Just get
Stands
murdered.
there looking kind of haughty, like he's the shit, and doesn't realize he's got egg on his face.
Malachi would kill Nick in a second.
A lot of the high level monsters, like the monsters manual, it's like half things that are too powerful for average campaigns to even use.
Mhm.
Not just
And then-
average campaign, it's like every campaign.
And 2E has this awful psionic system.
Yeah.
And a lot of the cool monsters have psionic abilities, but we just never use them because we don't want to figure out how to use psionics.
Fucking psionics.
Yeah, that's psionic. Rough. What's your favorite psionic monster? Like,
I wouldn't
is
know.
it
we've
just
never
a
used
traditional
Oh,
mind
come-
flayer?
Brian, you've had some
that's
psionic
sweet.
monsters. I mean, it might have been a decade ago or 2 decades ago, but
Yeah, I tried to create a psionicist and I got 0 buy-in from you. And so it was really rough to be playing this character that was using a system that the DM just was not interested in interacting with. It is kind of set up that you can use it independently. Like you can interact with non-psionic creatures, but I don't know. I can't even remember.
yeah.
There's that...
Mind flayers,
no.
by the way.
It's called
I
like a Kira, like a Kirre. It's kind of like a lion, but it's got like 7 attacks. I would say
Yeah,
it would be badass.
I don't think we've ever used it. It looks kind of dumb.
It's got psionics, but like I
kinda-
feel like
yeah.
even without the psionics,
You
Would
know,
be pretty
there
cool.
are a set of monsters that are not psionics and that have been around since like the dawn of D&D that are not even that high of level, but I think are severely underused in terms of like potential campaign. And that's the Modron. The Modron are mechanical beings, and they come from Mechanus, right? But that's not necessary to base in your campaign. They're basically the pure distillation of law with no other like moral code, right? And they, depending on how complex they are, they can do a number of things at a time. So your most very basic Modron can only do one task until somebody higher than it tells it to do another task. And then like 2 tasks and 3 tasks, so on and so forth up to the top. And I've always been fascinated by the idea that the Modron have come to your campaign world and they are testing all the laws of physics and the laws of the world. And they're like, does gravity work? And they pick up a person and drop them from a mountain. Check, sure does. And then they run back to their Modron people and they're just causing absolute chaos across the campaign world the PCs have to go deal with.
Huh.
sounds pretty cool.
I've seen their stat blocks in 5e, but I don't think I've even seen them before that.
Yeah, they're definitely not in the 2E monsters manual. They're probably in like some weird campaign setting or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe they're a campaign setting monster, but they've been around for well before 5e. They've been around for as long as I've been playing the game, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't see them in the 2E monster manual.
No, I don't think they are, but they're cool, like little tiny robots, right?
Yeah,
Chet's in
they're
their
like-
Planescape.
Planescape had a Planescape, absolutely.
What about Rakshas and Neal? That's always seemed like a
Oh,
cool
yeah.
big bad evil guy to me, but you never use them
Ooh.
unless you have used them and we just don't know.
I
Actually,
tried to-
Baron songs are
I
Rakshasa.
tried. There was one in the very first Dicing with Death, but I don't know that it ever came up. Neal might have died before it mattered.
Rakshasa. What are these like
These
the
are-
weird lion men people?
Yeah, Tiger Man,
they're-
yeah, and the
they're
hands are
Hindu.
backwards.
They're Hindu demons, yeah, backwards
Mhm.
hands. They're like men with animal features, so like lions or tigers or gorillas.
I think they have like permanent shape change and things like that, so they can, pretend to be human.
I mean,
Cool.
that's another monster based off mythology,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Mhm.
a Hindu equivalent of a demon.
In fact, would be pretty good in Arcadia East, wouldn't it? It'd fit with the
Yeah,
Eastern
I could.
theme.
Well, I mean, it's only called Arcadia East because it's like east of the landmass. It's not like
Yeah, right,
Eastern
well,
inspired.
don't try and back out. Because we've called you out. Oh, Rakshasa, are they Catman? I've never heard of them. It's not like
They're like
that's going to be the
animals.
center of the new campaign. Shit.
No, for Arcadia East, it's going to be like big monsters that are semi-unique that live up in the mountains and come down into the jungles. And so whatever campaign ends up being there is probably going to have a lot of like, here's a really big solo monster that's crazy and weird and you've never seen before and you have no idea what it does, and it's like
Oh, that
stomping through the
sounds
jungle to come after you. So I'm hoping that it's lots of like big solo encounters and then maybe like, smaller things here and there, but
Lots of research on the monsters and build up.
yeah, it's basically like a let me design 50 really badass but bizarre monsters and just like throw them at you one at a time sort of things. Did you
Isn't it
see
like a really
Kong
popular
on
game at the
Skull
moment?
Isle? I don't know, maybe.
Come on, Skull.
It was like the latest King Kong movie
Oh.
that came out in like 2016 or something.
The one with
No.
like Jack Black.
No.
No,
That was good, though,
the
that.
one with
I
Samuel
like that
Jackson.
one. I won't have you slag that off, by the way.
Yeah.
I wasn't really
No,
gonna slag it
No,
off.
I know you weren't, Greg. I could tell that you liked it. I think Neal was
God.
gonna slag off.
Yeah, well, so in 2016 or something, they did a new King Kong movie, Kong on Skull Island, and it's basically like humans end up on this island in the Pacific that no one's ever been to, and there's monsters everywhere. And people run around and they try and fight King Kong and a whole bunch of other bullshit. But in the process, they run into a whole bunch of really weird, cool monsters. Like they're walking through a bamboo forest and all of a sudden like the bamboo starts to move and it's the legs of this giant spider monster above them. And they all get like impaled by the bamboo stalks that come down that are its actual legs. And then you've got like a deep spawn like thing in a lake, and you've got a monster of this type over here, and like these weird two-legged things that like drag their tails behind them that run over here, just like a whole bunch of weird ass monsters. And while that was not the like core inspiration for the campaign, like I started building this area or thinking about this area, and then I saw Kong on Skull Isle, and I was like, oh, this is the campaign that I've been building unintentionally.
Sounds
So-
pretty sick, though. I might watch that.
Yeah, I just want monsters.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Is it time for our first topic of discussion?
Bring it on, Greg.
Okay. So, I thought I was going to bring up a rules thing, and I thought that might be too heavy for our first. So, Neal is probably most recognizable for his campaign setting. You've spent so much time and effort on Arcadia and the inner workings of it and building up this campaign setting for your kind of modified system. I thought something that'd be very interesting to discuss is, as players, for Neal and Nick and myself, what are the things that you look for when you are looking at a campaign setting? What are the things that tickle your interest in a campaign setting? And as Neal, maybe on the flip side of that, when you're creating these campaign settings and putting all this time and effort into it, what are the things that make your creativity spike? What makes you want to put them on paper and run these? Basically, what are the things that inspire you the most about campaign setting?
Oh my God, that's such a real question.
You kind of like moderate here, right, Greg, and give us all the time to speak? Or
Sure, yeah. Since I kind of prepared it, I guess I can give you my first thoughts on it while you guys think. When I look at campaign setting, one of the first things that I actually look at is the magic setting, like the magic system being used. And sometimes it's the same as whatever system that you're running it in, whether that be 5e or Dungeon World or something in between. But I find that a lot of unique campaign settings at least have some mention or reference to how magic works in that world. And that always sets my mind going with the potential implications and ramifications, what that kind of special magic means to who's using it and the world at large. And I always am very impressed by magic systems that kind of break a little bit away from the norm, right? Whether it's storing demons in your head to cast the magic, or it is a very scientific approach. Magic is this kind of rediscovery of the kind of lost rules of time. I always find that to be kind of the first thing I always turn to before I kind of backpedal into some of the other topics of the book.
This is such a real question. I don't have any answers for you, man.
I think along the lines of that magic thing, and one thing that I tend to think of is like the metaphysics of the campaign. So like what is reality, and for like a D&D type setting, like the powers that be it gods or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the underlying, I don't know, nature of the universe?
What is it about the metaphysics that like draws you into certain games and maybe like turns you away from others?
I mean, this jumped into my head because you were talking about magic. I mean, it's
Right.
like, where is our power coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And for Dean, a lot of times that it's in the gods, right?
Yeah,
Almost,
definitely.
and in bad settings, I feel like they kind of lean on that too much, and they don't dig deep enough into it. And they're just like, oh, there's these gods, and they're the source of your divine powers as a cleric or what have you. But I
Mhm.
think the more interesting ones play on that trope in a more interesting way. I think Neal's done a cool, I don't know, it fleshed out his pantheon in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think some of the most iconic D&D settings are D&D settings with unusual or just maybe if they're not even unusual, they're just different than the norm pantheons for gods. Some of the most iconic things are like Ravenloft, where the gods don't exist, but something is answering your cleric's prayers, right? The iconic kind of system of, I mean, this is very old, but the Dragonlance gods are very different from a lot of the things that came before. I think that's a very important part for sure to an campaign setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also in terms of metaphysics, it's like where is your universe taking place, right? Is it like D&D's got the plane sort of built into it, right? So
Yeah.
you're on this prime materia plane, but sort of built into that is there's this astral and ethereal. A lot of that gets taken for granted, but in playing with sort of that stuff can make an interesting setting, an interesting take on setting. And Neal, you've kind of played on that with your like shadow realms and first, second, third prime material planes.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, that's a big aspect of setting. Is like what is right? What is, what exists? Where are you? Where can you go? What powers exist in the universe, and where do they come from? They come from gods. How do you interact with those?
Dude, you guys put so much more thought into these questions and these answers than I do.
I'm
I
pulling
just
you
get
out of my
like
ass.
I just get like fucked up and watch old movies and be like, oh, that's fucking cool. Let's put that in a D&D campaign. That's like the extent of my research.
So what are your... Oh, go Nick.
I feel like I'm struggling to answer this because I only ever really got into D&D watching the original roleplay, and then I played in all these campaigns with Neal. And I think if I think back, like what I like most about the setting, I think is I'm really into like Crusader Kings and Game of Thrones, especially at the time when this was first starting, like all those years back. I really love the way the political hierarchy in Arcadia or in Solemn
Yeah,
is realistic and feels like a living thing, and that
Not
I don't know, like stuff like, oh yeah, you're a level 1 character, you can't just go and get a meeting with the princess,
mhm.
or stuff like that. Like it's so easy to just give into things like that with players, but I think that the payoff is much better when something like that actually happens. If it was
Yeah.
hard to get there in the first place, and it's the same thing with the gods as well. Like in Frofro, we spent so long, or I spent so long trying to make headway with like Belim or whatever and all of that stuff, and there was like every now and again the odd little thing, but nothing really significant. And then when it finally did pay off in the end, it just felt much better for the fact that you'd been working towards it for like a year.
Yeah, that's something that I really resonate with, is that if things are easy, they are meaningless. And
Yeah.
if things are like grandiose all the time, then they're not grandiose ever. You know, one of the complaints my wife will hear me say over and over and over again is that, like, we'll watch a movie or play or whatever, and I'll be like, they tried to do too much too fast. They tried to like be really cool all the time, and it's all this like trying to hit the peak over and over again that just makes all the peaks really flat and boring. So I want to have I'm always aiming for that like long game ramp up towards that end where everything's going to be amazing, but in the meantime, like, you got to like muck around and you'll have like blips that bump you up, but you got to like live in the dirt in order to appreciate the cooler shit later on.
But you've got to make sure the payoff's done right, like, because that's one of the great things about Game of Thrones is that, I mean, for me, especially in the book and like the start of the show, I loved the way, I mean, spoilers for the very first episode, but that very first scene of the show is, I don't know if you remember, it's like those 3 Night's Watch guys going beyond the wall, and then they run into like all the White Walkers essentially, and then 2 of them get killed, and then the very next scene is the one surviving member getting beheaded, and then like that's the only thing you see about them for like the next 4 years. And it's always in the background, like people are talking about it. But then, I mean, spoilers for the last season, they just fucked the payoff. So you build up for 7 years, and then if the payoff's no good, then it doesn't work, right? So you've got to be very careful, making sure that it's still satisfying when it actually happens.
Another good show that did that was True Blood. In the very first episode, Suki like throws this chain and wraps around a person's head, and you're like, "What the fuck was that? Was that a lucky shot? That looked weirdly magical." And then like no one talks about her like uniqueness for another 2 or 3 seasons, and then it's like slowly leaks out that she's got this really weird tasting blood, and then it turns out she's a fairy, or you know, whatever it actually was. But I like that slow, like, here's something weird. We're not going to talk about it for a long time until you think that it was nothing and you forget about it. And then we're going to bring it back once you've, like, lost track of it. I like that approach.
But the thing about most traditional media, TV shows and novels, is if it's good, nothing is nothing, right? Like, you don't include something like that unless it's going to matter. Like, that's just not a very good use of images or screen time, right? Where it's precious.
Yeah, so, I think you struggle to compare D&D to traditional media for that reason.
That's what I was going to say. That's one thing that I kind of like about D&D, and I think why it's so interesting to watch is partially because it's improvised and just the nature of like randomly generating a story is that sometimes things legitimately don't make sense. And in that way, it does feel more real than a TV show, right? Because sometimes something gets thrown in just because it's a random encounter and doesn't want to matter.
The very start, from the start of watching Neal's shows, like I love the threat of death has to be there at all times, and it's not like if you're only ever going to die fighting the dragon at the end of the campaign, that's not as interesting as like, you know, saying the wrong thing in a town and then getting killed by the guards, or accidentally running into the lair of a giant and getting killed at like level 1, or like that has to be there for me. That's what makes it different to a TV show, because you like, all right, Game of Thrones is slightly different, but you know that the main character's not just going to get shanked in the back by a bandit walking down the road out of nowhere with no real story.
Game of Thrones probably isn't the best.
That's the worst example, but I know what you're talking about.
I might do something like that, partially because I think he's inspired a lot. Canada, D&D and other that era of sci-fi fantasy stuff.
Yeah, maybe not Game of Thrones, but Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah. You go for a swim in the lake, and all of a sudden, like some random eel comes out and murders you. You couldn't have expected that. You know, it's moments like that that really make the game good.
Does not make- the problem with that encounter was it didn't feel
I know that was
not to do.
a bad
So
moment of DMing.
Why would a little eel hunt down a person to the death?
It was not my finest moment of DMing. I'm sorry, Ryan.
It's fine. I'm sure I've done worse.
Yeah.
Going off something Nick said earlier that I kind of wanted to pick apart. You said one of the things that you liked about Neal's campaign was that they're realistic, which I think I would disagree with. They're not. I mean, it's obviously not realistic, but it feels real. It's internally consistent.
That's what I mean, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean. Internally.
Yeah,
consistent,
I know what I know what you meant, and I agree with the sentiment. But just to squabble with that, because the challenge I think in making an interesting campaign setting is to make it feel unique and different from the real world, because that's quite mundane.
Yeah.
But to still have it feel true to itself, feel self-consistent.
But to counter that, I think like specifically in the politics system, I like the way that you've got hedge knights, barons, dukes, kings, and queens. I like that is grounded in reality because it gives a context to what the game that you understand as a.
I don't know if it's grounded in reality or grounded in like collective misinterpretation of reality, right? It's everyone's got those. I don't know. Yeah, it's more grounded in like culture.
I guess so. Yeah.
Well, it's familiar at least, right? Whether or not it's reality, it's something that we are all like collectively familiar with. And in order to explore what is unknown, we usually add a lot of familiar to help give it, right? Even in science fiction, like very common with alien things beyond our understanding. So I think essentially what Nick's point is, Neal has put a lot of time and effort to
flesh it out.
I'm trying to make it easily accessible. It might not be the exact same king, duke, baron system that you had in England in 1700, but it's close enough that you can, that it feels familiar and it feels like something you could pick up.
So to touch on this point though, sorry, just while we're here, you've got no dukes in Arcadia. Was that a conscious decision, or was it just a case of like I'm just missing that out?
Well, Arcadia's really small, right? So it's like basically the size of Germany, right? Or somewhere between the size of Germany and the size of France. So it's not that big of an area. And then we have like 5 kingdoms and this whole Elven region as well. So if you were to split modern Germany up into like 5 kingdoms, each kingdom's not going to be very big. So if you want like a nice hierarchy, it can't be that deep. Otherwise, you'd have like the king, these 2 dukes, and then like whatever's below a duke, and then that would be it. Like there's not enough territory for all of this to happen. So I sort of shortened the power pyramid, the power tree. I don't know what you want to call it, the chain of command, so that it would fit all the things that we would need. So I
guess like the king of Eridon is actually the Duke of Eridon. He's just calling himself a king, and there should be like one kingdom of Arcadia that's made up of like.
Absolutely not. No way. No. But if they got unified together, you could put an emperor over all of that. I took the.
Go
ahead.
Sorry, but like historically, like there's like duchies that broke away from the Holy Roman Empire or from like the Kingdom of France or whatever, and then they'd call themselves like the King of Aquitaine, when in reality, Aquitaine in France was actually a duchy.
Well, according to you fucking Frenchie, but they were their own king of their own kingdom. You limey bastard. That's all. It's a matter of perspective, right? So I needed a couple of layers of power. I wanted to do 3 because it just seemed to fit. So we did kings and queens with gold crowns, counts with silver crowns, and barons with brass crowns, which we never really go into that little level of detail. And I decided, at some point, I did decide, like, do we want counts or do we want dukes? And I looked through old feudal systems of things, and, the English system was different than the German system, which was different than the Spanish system, and it was too complicated to, like, unify, because all these systems were in competition with each other, and they changed over the hundreds of years. So I'm like, look, in California, you've got the state, and it's broken into counties, and then it's later down broken into, like, small cities. So let's just put a fucking count in charge of the counties, because that seems familiar to me. And I can understand, like, Santa Barbara County runs all of this, and Santa Barbara's the seat of Santa Barbara County. Got that. So that's sort of the reason I did counts instead of dukes, but they're all fucking interchangeable positions at the end of the day. And I know there's nuances of difference between them, but if you're doing, like, 3 layers of power, you can pick and choose whatever you want.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
All right. So, to kind of springboard away from the internal workings of politics past empire, you guys made mention that you took a lot of influence and inspiration from the media outside of D&D to put into.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, outside of the traditional fantasy that we've discussed, right? Game of Thrones. Obviously, you can't escape the influence of Tolkien's work.
Mhm.
What are other media that you get the most inspiration from? Like, what are you most intrigued about putting in your game?
So, Greg, you brought this up earlier, and this is what I try to break away from media and get to the source material, which is like real world mythology.
Uh-huh.
So to like go back to, I don't know, like myths. And one thing, and in creating a setting, I mean, tying back into this, is I'll try and stick with the particular culture's mythos for a particular region to give it a feel.
Right.
So I'll like I wouldn't say I research well. I'll dig deep into the Wikipedia articles, the Scottish folklore, for example, right, and make a region that most of the monsters and whatever come from a particular culture's folklore. And a lot of, I mean, and that's basically what Tolkien did, right? And any good, I think, good settings in media go back to the source. I think where some books are bad and call out, like Harry Potter, for example. I think the issue with that is I don't know that it's coming directly from the source. It's like 3 steps removed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
it's like taking these mythological tropes that the author doesn't necessarily realize are actual mythologies necessarily. And it's getting like laundered through Tolkien, various other inspirations,
Right.
rather than,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think that's an important thing to kind of do is go back and find the inspirations of these creatures. I try to do that some for like goblins and elves. Oftentimes you'll find mischievous elves that live in the woods and kidnap children, or
that's one thing I'm playing with now, and a lot of that elves and goblins are kind of the same thing
in some respects.
Two
Yeah,
sides
absolutely.
of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you do a really good job of that. One of my favorite things, and it's kind of a minor detail, is that maybe it was Qualnir's campaign, there were some like gnomes, some brownies riding corgis or something, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like little forest creatures riding corgis, Ryan?
It feels like an original idea, but no, that's Welsh folklore.
Right.
And is it actually?
Yeah, and when you explained that, I went and I looked it up, and I was like, holy shit, that's so fucking cool. You do a really good job of bringing in like myths from their origin sources.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I try. Read a lot of Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. As a counterpoint, even though I agree a lot with what Ryan is saying, I do think that there are some stories that are worth kind of drawing inspiration from, and I think specifically into kind of more genre. I like drawing from the works of dark horror. Lovecraft is a good example, although an obvious one, probably not the only one I draw from. But you can take their kind of commitment to a certain theme or a certain kind of style of storytelling and incorporate that into your campaigns. I think D&D works very, very well, especially as you start into the kind of like dungeon delving phase, into the kind of darker bits of horror. I also try to draw from kind of other genres like noir. If we're going to do a segment in a city, being able to go back to some old detective noir and find the way that those kind of stories unfold. I really like putting that into the game as well, and not just peeling back away from the authors and the lenses that they use.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Let me clarify what I say. It's not that I don't take inspiration from other books that I read, but my instinct is to borrow too much, so I have to fight that, right? So like I'm reading this sort of stuff more often than I'm reading classic mythology. So if I don't stop myself, I'll accidentally wind up ripping off too much from Robert Jordan or from whatever I'm at the
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to fight that. Which is, I mean, I still like to get inspiration from that, but you don't want to rip off too much, otherwise it feels like
It feels cut and paste, right?
yeah,
They're like, oh, what's Darth Vader doing in my D&D game?
yeah, or it just feels unoriginal, right?
Right.
Like it's fine to be inspired, but if you name your dark wizard Dalamar Dark,
Yeah, man. Yeah,
Neal actually
mistakes
did
are
that,
made.
though, so.
Well, that's why we've never gone
That's
back to
right.
that area, because I was desperate for a name and I was like taking these inspirations, but in my head I'm like, I'm going to take this as an inspiration, but I'm not going to like carbon copy it. And then when you get in the situation and it's your first time streaming with these people and the pressure's on and you're new at all of this shit and you're like, fuck it, I don't know what to do. And so then you just like blatantly rip everything off and feel bad about it for
I think that was
years.
fine, and I mean, we can laugh at it in hindsight, but it probably, like, if you hadn't made that of a comparison, people might have caught it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And so in that way, you probably introduced a lot of people to Dragonlance,
I hope so.
which is cool.
You know, we just touched on it before, Greg. You were talking about Lovecraft, and it just reminded me, and I just feel I need to point this out on the stream here. That conversation we had with that guy in chat, Vlad or whatever it's like. I can't remember. Dapper Lad.
Yes.
Okay, I need to be-
see that, Neal.
I need
See
someone
that?
to fill me in on this.
What's
'cause
going on?
I like walked in late to this meme, and I don't understand. There's a vampire in
People were arguing about
story.
armor, right? They were arguing about like what it's like, whether you have to wear leather under chainmail, I think. And then this Dapper Lad guy is like, "Oh yeah, actually no, you don't need to wear. You do need to wear leather or it'll chafe." And then there's a bit of an argument, and he says, "Well, how do you know? Have you ever wore it?" He's like, "Yes, actually, I've got my own suit of chainmail. It's in like my ancient castle that belongs to my family. I'm from royalty." So they start talking to him about it, like, what are you actually descended from royalty? This guy is from, which country was it, Greg? It was somewhere in Eastern Europe.
Oh yeah, Eastern
Albania
Europe
or
somewhere. Albania, I think it was Albania. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that
so
was
it
true.
turns out he's like descendant from the old king of Albania. He's got a dilapidated castle in the mountains. His like family are shunned for did he go as far as to say that they were like known for using the occult like back in the day? Like,
his family are like known occultists.
like everything
like
he
his
said,
old-
it just sounded like.
And
he
you
is a
believed
vampire.
him?
Yeah, I believed him. Yeah,
He's
I just-
definitely a vampire. I'm just calling it right now. Of all the people I've ever met in my life, he is the most likely to be a vampire.
There was more to it than that, though. It's like everything he typed, it was just more and more convincing me that this guy's actually a vampire. And at the very least, it's the start of a H.P. Lovecraft story where he goes back to his father's old castle and finds some dark shit.
I definitely want to play a Call of Cthulhu game where we go investigate Dapper Vlad's castle.
It would be so sick. Call of Cthulhu is great.
Wait, is his name? Is it Dapper Lad or Dapper
Yeah,
Vlad?
Dapper Lad.
yeah.
He's in. If you go into Tavern, he's like the fourth comment up. Dapper Lad 1. Because apparently there's Dapper Lad 2 and 3 somewhere.
Did you see he's changed his someone changed his profile picture for him and it's now got
They added
little
the
vampire
fangs.
teeth. Yeah,
Oh, nice.
that's great.
But
Yeah.
you don't wear leather under chain, do you? Isn't it usually like a padded thing?
Yeah, okay, I don't know.
A
It's a
gambeson
gambesson. You
chain
wear
or whatever call it.
something under the chain. Yeah.
Fucking nuts. All right.
You don't just put like chain on skin. But yeah. And you would wear chain under your plate as well. Or, maybe not
Or
all
like-
the way under it, but at least in certain
Or
areas.
integrated into your plate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
So Neal, you've artfully kind of dodged this, other than Dragonlance, which obviously, you don't have to talk about a book or anything, but what you did talk about watching movies and stuff. What kind of media kind of influences you when you make these settings, right? You kind of have an experience from a different side, other than just a simple homebrew. You've actually sat on stream for hours at a time and kind of created a like sprawling setting. Like, where did you draw your influences from when you were making this? Like, what is it that kind of inspired Arcadia and like
The Canals of Mars. Back in the day, before good astronomy, some jackass looked at Mars with some shitty ass telescope, and he's like, there are canals on Mars. And everyone got all like, oh my God, there's Martians. There's these big cities everywhere. There's these like canals that go everywhere. Oh my God, Martian people. And then, eventually someone got better telescopes and like, never mind. There's no people on Mars. It's a dead planet. But the canals of Mars stuck with me. And so I wanted an area that had these like really big canals that ran through them. And I'm like, well, that's kind of just like a river system. What if these canals are like a ripped open world? And that's where I started to bring in Record of Lodoss War. They call the island that they're on, Lodoss, the cursed island. And the whole idea is like the gods ripped it apart during this war of creation, blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of like merged Canals of Mars with Record of Lodoss War, and then with the Cataclysm from Dragonlance. And so we have this like island that gets ripped apart, sort of Dragonlance-y, sort of Record of Lodoss War-y, and creates these canals, which is the things from Mars. And so we've got these like large cliffs where people plummet down below, and they like separate these kingdoms, which give them like really nice dividing borders, because I really like my kingdoms to have like geographical borders that make sense. Not just like weird arbitrary things. You've all probably heard me rant and rave about Spain and Portugal and how Portugal shouldn't exist. Sorry to my Portuguese viewers.
Why is that new?
We'll talk about. We can go to. Why the fuck?
America's what shouldn't exist, right?
No. Portugal and Spain have like
told.
happily coexisted for so long. Fuck you. And it's just Spain is so much bigger than Portugal. Why haven't they taken over the rest of the Iberian Peninsula? Like,
they can't speak Portuguese.
well, because they're just like friendly and coexist, and that's great. But in my brain, I'm like, Spain is such a bigger area. They've got so many more people. Why haven't they just conquered their like smaller neighbor to the west?
Portugal was extremely powerful outside of like just its land on the Iberian Peninsula.
Sure. I'm just saying, like, they've been around for a long time. Spain is much, much larger than Portugal. At some point, you think they would have absorbed them. As empires go, things, once upon a time, every empire was just like a small little town, and they all slowly got consolidated together, and it just baffles me.
It sounds like you're just complaining about how shitty the Spanish Empire was compared to...
Anyway.
At the time.
The point is, I like nice geographical barriers, and Portugal irritates me.
So, yeah.
And that's...
One thing I'll say...
Yeah, go for it.
But I don't think, Neal, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't... Do you read a lot of fantasy or sci-fi other than
not anymore?
Other than Dragonlance?
Not anymore. I don't.
You read Dragonlance and thought, well, this is as good as it gets.
I read like 60 Dragonlance books, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of works to your benefit, though. You're getting inspiration from like that. That's where things can feel tried, or is if you're getting your inspiration too close to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. I like that you're not like watching other D&D streams to get ideas for what to do on your D&D streams. You're watching these old black and white movies to get campaign ideas. And so we often make fun of you for this, but you're not looking at other game systems to figure out how to redesign systems. You're like reinventing the wheel from scratch, which sometimes results in us literally just reinventing Burning a Wheel.
Which is a great game, by the way.
Yeah, but Neal would never know it.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. So I don't know, but so sometimes you can waste your time reinventing something, but other times you will result in much more original, interesting ideas because you're reaching far and wide for inspiration.
Yeah, I do like that. That's exactly it. I don't like to pull too closely from other things. I don't want just to end up copying other people. I don't want to be, how do you say, like there is an ebb and a flow of like styles. For a while zombies were the hit, and there was a period of like 7 or 8 years where vampires were the coolest shit, and there were vampire movies and vampire TV shows, and there's like a cultural trend towards these things. And I want to sit under my rock with my fingers in my ear shouting, no, and just come up with whatever I want to come up with and like spot cultural trends.
Yeah, but you run into trouble when you don't realize zombie shit, and then you try and make your own zombie campaign thinking that it's original when you're the 7th zombie show. Yeah, it's not a perfect strategy. It takes a lot of work, and sometimes it produces stupid results, but
Fuck it. I like it.
I have a correction to make. So mail is not actually made of chain. So chainmail isn't a thing or something, right?
Oh, all right,
just-
we're gonna
it's
get
just
into this
mail.
argument. Yeah. I mean, like,
Let's not argue about chainmail.
That's that.
because this is just a matter of like naming things. You know, it was mail, it wasn't chainmail. Longsword's not really a type of sword. It's like a big super category of sword. It's all just a bunch of nomenclature
Malarkey.
bullshit. Yeah. Arose by any other name, you know?
So
Who cares
I
what
got
we
a
call these
question I
things?
want to ask you, Neil. Right, specifically talking about campaigns that we've been in, just so to make sure it's relevant. Is there any time when someone's taken a decision that is just completely not what you expected and it's really changed? Or you disagreed with the decision, maybe it made things worse and you wish it had gone a different way?
I think I do that like 7 times a week.
Yeah.
That's
Really?
or I aim to. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like to not
Maybe
do what
Neil can
Neil's
answer the
expecting you to.
question.
I don't know, maybe I've worded
Well,
it
let's
poorly.
talk about what happened 2 days ago as what I didn't expect to happen.
This which is this?
This is a
ODM
Cuban
or
Nights.
Cuban Nights.
Yeah.
This is a Cuban Nights. Crazy spoilers for Cuban Nights, guys. I managed to capture the Cuban Nights, all 4 of them, stripped them of
He
their
admits it.
weapons.
He was trying to capture them.
He
And
said I as well. Like he didn't say. I captured.
Great.
Sorry, I thought we were doing evil laughs.
Yeah. I got them captured,
Wow.
tied them all up, took off all of their weapons, all of their armor, gagged the mage, and bound his hands together so he couldn't cast spells. And I'm like, all right, I've got these people in a position of true helplessness. There's literally nothing they can do. I can just I can force them to agree to this thing that will send them back to their own country and do, you know, have all of these ramifications. This isn't what I intended. I actually thought they were just going to like rescue this other guy, and I had to actually take a break and go pace around in the living room for 15 minutes to figure out what the fuck to do with them now that I have them all captured. And then I figured out what to do. I figured out that they were going to be like have to be forced to sign these documents saying that they would never come back, and then the documents would get spread far and wide. So if they ever did come back, they would have the reputation as like liars and traitors, and it wouldn't really have mechanical. It wouldn't like force them to leave, but if they did like go against their word, people would just view them as you know, unfavorable. And it was great. And that way the party captured could still survive and move on. And then they're like, you know what? Despite having no weapons or armor and all being tied up and facing a wizard and a knight and a couple of guards, let's fight them. And that took me by surprise. And they died.
Never underestimate players' ability to like not want to give in on stuff like that, though. I guess
Mhm.
like the will to not give over your control to the DM of like your fate is strong.
Yeah. I'm still gonna try. I've been working for years to get parties that will surrender and like roll with it because it's favorable for them to surrender rather than fight to the death. And it hasn't happened yet. I've been working on it for 5 years, 5.5 years now, and I can't get my PCs to just fucking surrender and wait for an opportunity to make their move rather than fight it out in the moment.
Yeah, I think it goes against gamer instincts. Like, it doesn't feel like that's what you're supposed to do.
I know,
know.
and it drives me crazy.
I
Just
think-
fucking surrender sometimes, guys. It's great. It's so useful.
Yeah, I think what's gotten me to turn around is years of dicing with death and other equivalents where we just go through characters like they're, I don't know, yesterday's underpants and just like meat
Mhm.
grinder mode, and you just stop getting attached and you start to like, okay, what would be the coolest thing for the story, or what would this character, or getting into character, what would this character actually do, rather than thinking of it from a gamer perspective.
Yeah. And
It's always hard to do that.
a quick aside, I know there are members of the Akuba Knights here in chat. I'm not trying to be critical of your actions, just mentioning that they're a surprise to me, and I wasn't
I think if
expecting
anything,
this shit.
That's a compliment. I think one of Neal's favorite things, to put words in your mouth, is when the players surprise you. Right? I think that was meant to be a compliment.
That's
It was
very
like,
true. When players surprise me, I'm always really happy and impressed because I've seen
that's
it all,
also
man.
fun for a DM.
Yeah, so the more creative, interesting thing players do, the greater it is. In that situation, the fighter of the group managed to slip his ropes, which was amazing. I made it really hard for him, and he managed to do it anyway. Almost pissed me off. And then his attack plan was like, the wizard's the greatest threat. I'm just gonna throw the wizard out the window. And he did. He picked up a wizard and made an attack roll to hit the wizard and grab him. Made an attack roll to throw the wizard out a window and made it. Made a strength check to break the glass by throwing the wizard, which that's 3 rolls. And granted, he's got like 18 strength, so the strength check was pretty easy. And the wizard has AC 10. He has plus 10 to hit, so it was likely to happen. But it's still a lot of rolls. And then the wizard, managed to hold on and helped shape the rest of the battle. But that was a fun moment.
I threw a wizard out a window once and was really pleased with myself until he flew back up and threw a lightning.
That's good.
Yeah.
You know in Hardcore Heroes, spoilers, right, when we left the gate open. I always wondered if, because you could have just let that go. Do you know what I mean? Or you could have said at the time, you're leaving, you leave the room with the swelling vortex to the, prime material plane in the background. I wonder, were you happy with that? Did you, when you realized, I can take this and force the story in this direction? Or to you, was it just an inevitable consequence that you might have almost even felt sad about?
No, it was maybe a couple hours, maybe it was the day before we were going to come back. I think we had you'd left the portal open, and then maybe we had taken a week off or switched campaigns for a week, but there had been a gap in time between you guys leaving the door open and returning to the door. It had been a while.
Yeah.
And it was the day before or a couple hours before the session where you guys returned to the door. And I was just sort of reading stuff, and someone said something like, didn't they leave that door open? What if something went through the other way? And I'm like, wow, that's really true. And these demons are looking for a way in. You know what? Yeah, fuck it. What if the demons just... I have no idea. I have no idea, but some random person was like, what if something went the other way through? And I'm like, yeah. What if the demons line up and I just that sounds like a great idea. And so at the last minute, I changed all of my plans 180 degrees and let's use this to let demons into the world. And then I did a bunch of math to be okay, it would take them a while to find it. And at first we'd only have a few. And then the whole Congo line eventually arrives over there, and did a whole bunch of math to figure out the rate of demon flow into the world to figure out exactly how many there were. And it was I think it was open for a week and no one came through for the first 4 days. And then it was 3 days of people coming through. At first it was 1 an hour, and the second day it was 1 every half hour or 20 minutes, and then at the end it was 1 a minute.
So I feel this is a question you're going to say, you'll do your typical, oh, that is an interesting question, and not give an answer because you'll pretend I'm onto something. But I've always felt right, the demons that came through the gate were from the shadow plane. Yeah. They were shadow demons. They weren't the same demons that are now in Heatstroke.
They're the same demons, just in a different plane.
Yeah, right? But the ones that are in Heatstroke aren't shadowy.
Because they came through the shadow plane and they're on the
I feel I left a whole bunch of clues that explains exactly what's going on, and no one's really picked up on them yet. I kind of want to tell you guys so we can talk about it. And at the same time, I also want to just let you guys find this on your own. But
because there's obviously the portal under the temple in Heatstroke, which was linking to the shadow plane of the demon plane. So I'm thinking that the only way real demons got there was they'd have to have come from the demon plane, which presumably is where William and Grimes are, into the shadow demon plane, from the shadow demon plane into the shadow prime material plane, and then from there, randomly, just by chance, through the door that we left open.
But it wasn't really randomly, right? You guys picked up a magical artifact there that tells you what their plans are.
What their plans are?
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah. I mean, not their whole plan. You're not gonna uncover the entirety of everything, but it's not so random after all.
Figure Nick is learning so much about the campaign he played in.
I'm confused because I've been in so many campaigns that have interacted with this. I'm which campaign, which artifact?
Yeah.
Yeah, the tuning fork is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right? They were trying to look for a portal.
They were looking for portals. They had been looking for portals for a long time. And the tuning fork showed up well before you guys left the stupid door open.
Yeah.
Are you sure? I thought we left the portal open the very first time we went.
But I think the tuning fork showed up prior to you guys going, and I think it was spotted first by Kine and Van Helsing.
Was it? Didn't
okay.
didn't we get it when we went through the portal under heat stroke and fought the pit
Man,
lord or
I
whatever it
don't
is?
remember. You know how long ago this shit was?
That's where we found the tuning fork. But I think Neal's saying that it may have shown up in Van.
Or
campaign.
whatever it was, like the tuning fork was an idea I had and had implemented significantly prior to the decision to let them into the prime materia via your leaving a door open. Which, by the way, is my favorite scene of any D&D campaign I've ever been in or played in or anything like that. Like,
where we realized we left it open?
No, just the players being like, oh, let's leave this door open. And just kind of I can always hear my dad's voice in the back of my head being like, what, were you born in a barn? Shut the door! Because that's what he would say all the time, which is weird, because we lived in...
I was so annoyed when we realized that Shirebrook was destroyed. I was so angry, man.
Okay. I really embraced that decision. Like, in retrospect, I'm sure I did accidentally leave it, or forget to shut it behind me. But in retrospect, I rationalized to myself that I intentionally did that for the benefit.
Yeah, because you're an agent of Malchus.
No, you guys, at the time, you said you didn't know if you could open it again, so you didn't want to shut it in case you couldn't open it from that side.
Oh, really?
I think that was the decision. You guys were just, like, worried that it would be shut forever, so you left it open.
I think, like,
we tested having one of us on either side.
Yes, we did. Wait, but no, because if we'd have remembered to do that, we would have remembered to close it.
But I think you might have like tested it once. I don't know. I remember you guys leaving it open intentionally out of caution.
I think what Ryan you said though about doing it on purpose. Like I think in game Malachi does think that Georg did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Because you had the amulet, right? You'd been there before. You're clearly working for Malchus. I think it makes sense that Malachi would think that.
Yeah.
And now I think that you think that as well. I think you did do it on purpose.
It's the sort of decision
Top
that
10 anime betrayals.
It's the sort of decision that I, as a player, have learned to embrace after playing D&D for so long. Like, I think the instinct is to metagame and try and lawyer and argue and be like, no, but I'm a dimensionalist with 19 intelligence. I totally would have remembered to shut the door.
Yeah.
As a player and a fan of, it makes for a much more interesting story to just embrace those mistakes and roll with it.
I hate that kind of thing. You know, one of my worst moments in Hardcore Heroes, and maybe even in all of the campaigns we've played, and I don't mean to call Sean out on this, but when we were into the keep in Anvil, I don't know if you remember, Neal, and we'd planned everything out perfectly, and we went to cast sleep on one of the guards, and Van was like, I'll cast whole person on him as well, just so he doesn't make a noise when he falls over. Yeah. And then we realized later that would have broke his invisibility, and I didn't have another invisibility to turn invisible again. And Sean spent ages arguing to basically say that we planned it out so much, and he would have known that it would have broke his invis, and I didn't have enough invis to turn him back, so he wouldn't have done it. And that just felt really dirty to me. But the alternative was probably Van getting killed. So.
Did you guys end up not having cast it?
Yeah, you led. Yeah.
Yeah. I like when player... It's another thing that I really enjoy is that in the real world, stupid mistakes that people make that they should never have made happen all the time, and they have huge real world ramifications. And so when players like make a mistake, even though they probably shouldn't have done that, I really want to keep those mistakes because people do stupid fucking shit
of course,
all the time.
Yeah.
So
because even though it was unsatisfying, I loved the ending of the original roleplay, the way that Jeff's character got killed literally by just pushing the wrong guy and arguing with the wrong guy.
Yeah.
This epic hero that's been going for it like over a year gets killed because of that. Like that is right. That's the consequence of a stupid mistake. Maybe you should have let Van die.
That's how shit in the Old West happens, you know? Some badass gunslinger comes into some town, and then some like random like nobody shoots him in the back, and this epic gunslinger is like murdered over nothing. And I like those sort of weird coincidences.
I do think there should be a balance, right? Like I absolutely am in agreement that this type of situation has to happen. Stupid mistakes are allowed. But we're playing people and characters with skills and knowledge so vastly different from our own, right? That I think there needs to be at least some possibility to way out.
Yeah, there is an argument, and people are talking about Sean did have that unfailing premonition cast on him, so he'd said that that would have warned him that it was a bad thing to do.
And maybe this like hold person invisibility thing is not the correct example, but like I think sometimes a silly mistake by a player that is just so obviously a silly mistake that the character wouldn't make is something to. I think there's a time and a place to say, nah, you made a stupid mistake, but there's got to be a time and a place too to be like,
Totally. I completely agree.
To me, I think you make that decision to err on the side of the story, or on the side of fun.
Yeah.
Which ruling would make for a more interesting story, would make for a more fun game to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, I think it's you just roll with the mistake and see what the consequences are. But sometimes it's like a stupid thing that would derail the whole campaign if you didn't retcon it.
Yeah.
So you're just like, oh, okay, retcon it. Or say, okay, you're not your character. Here's what your character would have been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Feels dirty though.
Yeah, and the distinction between those is sometimes kind of arbitrary. And especially if the DM has knowledge of like consequences that the players don't, it can feel sort of weird or railroady. And it's one of those things that you need your players. The players and the DM have to have like a lot of trust between them. So when the player's like, no, you left the door open, demons have invaded the world, it's going to be the focus of the next like 5 years of campaigning. Like the players need to be able to trust the DM that that's not just crap. And at the same time, the DMs need to be able to trust the players that like, okay, maybe you wouldn't have cast that sleep. Okay, it's fine. Let's move on. It's a weird relationship between player and DM.
I need to point out how great of a rules lawyer Sean is, though. I mean, I'm not sure that there's ever been a better rules lawyer than Sean. Saved my life on multiple occasions.
He's pretty good at Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember the like poison that would have killed you like way back in the beginning. Sean just like took control, man. He was like, nah, this isn't happening.
It was really shitty because I don't know if you remember, but I was like, I was away for the weekend in like another house with shitty internet. The whole time I was struggling there was like a big delay, so I just wasn't really like thinking properly. And if I'd have died because of that, I just would have been really salty. Glad it didn't go that way in the end.
Yeah.
Got more topics?
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a topic machine. So I tried to make everything fairly setting related. And so I know that we've had many a discussion in chat and in kind of the Ask Me Question Friday show about the role and use of technology in your D&D. Mm-hmm. And so I would love to have a kind of broader discussion of what, especially under the idea of a campaign setting, what is the role technology plays for you in Arcadia, and how far or how much technology are you willing to play with a player with? And then to the players among us, what is the draw of technology? How much technology is fun for you to play with in a campaign setting?
Inventing the sled was too much. I regret doing it.
I think you mean like literal technology, right? Like using Roll20, like and like computers and stuff.
Oh, is that what you mean?
Instead of pen and paper.
I sort of went between both during that question. At first, I thought he was talking about Roll20.
What are you talking about? In-game tech? Or?
I was talking about in-game tech. However, if we want to talk about out-of-game tech, I'm more than happy to, because I do think there's a very interesting kind of divide between my game that I run sitting at home with a big battle map and a bunch of friends with beer, and we have felt markers and pennies. Right, and the game that I run online on Saturdays, where we have Roll20 and cameras and lots of technology. That is an interesting question as well.
You meant
I did kind of mean in-game technology as far as like how it plays a role in the game setting. Enjoy about that.
Well, so here's the problem. Since Arcadia and all of my campaigns are going to be like sequential and they're all taking place in the same world, if someone invents something that really can't be rolled back very easily, right? If a player all of a sudden invents gunpowder and a working firearm and they run around with it, that's going to spread. Otherwise, unless it's just IDM hacks it out of the game. And then that permanently changes the setting. So I don't want to like casually make technological changes that will be with us forever. And also, technology changes really slowly. There was like a couple thousand years between the invention of the wheel and the invention of the wheelbarrow, right? And that shit just, it takes a long time to change. And us privileged assholes sitting over here with our like Wikipedia articles on all this stuff can be like, oh yeah, well clearly I'll just do this, this, and this, and it makes this thing. And it's really easy to see that in hindsight. But at the time, like, shit is difficult to invent. And
It's 1,000 years for the wheelbarrow.
I think there was a couple thousand years between the wheel and the wheelbarrow, because the wheel was originally invented for spinning pottery. So you didn't have to just like hold it and press it with your hands. You get it to spin, and then you can make like a proper vase that's even on all the sides or whatever. And then eventually,
asshole realizes you can rotate it 90 degrees.
yeah, you put a thing through it and you can put it on a cart, and then they have a cart, and then some brilliant asshole later is like, hold on, what about a one-wheeled cart that I just pick up? And like the world changes. So I don't like this whole like, oh, whatever, I'll just invent this brand new thing in 5 minutes and it's fine. Like it breaks my immersion. It breaks my immersion.
That's the bigger thing to me, is that context matters. So for some campaigns or some characters, it seems appropriate. But I get rubbed, like when I see players trying to invent things out of character and getting frustrated and lawyery that you won't let them throw it into campaign.
Yeah.
Especially if they're like they're playing some dumb fighter and they feel like they should be able to like, oh, it'd be super easy to make this weird trap that I invented. That probably wouldn't even work in real life. And here they are trying to role play a dummy character. I don't know. So context matters. So like that for me breaks immersion. However, if you're trying to play a 19-int character with an engineering proficiency, maybe it's appropriate to be able to, hack together some weird inventions.
Do you think that there is a room for technological investigation, much the same way there is magical research in a campaign?
Maybe.
Totally.
I don't like it though.
The results of like technological research though requires years and years and lots of like putting together prototypes and this and this and this, and it takes lots of people.
Yeah, it's not very fun to play.
Like, you can try it and it works. But I think interestingly, if the question is, how you worry about technology like impacting the overall setting, Neal, it's like new spells that's more of a danger, right? Than like coming up with some like, okay, a gun obviously would be pretty bad, but like the teleportation circle that I've made, if somehow Malachi dies and someone steals the spell book and then that gets out, like that would change.
Sure, but for some reason I'm okay with that, and I'm not okay with technological change. Somehow.
Okay.
Like Leonardo da Vinci was considered of his time like one of the great inventors, but like, that's what he's known for, his artwork and his inventions. And what inventions did he really make that were like world changing? Did he do like the double hull? That's maybe like his most important invention, or most like practical invention. Like he spent years developing a flying machine and went nowhere with it, and spent years developing all this crap and went really nowhere with it.
And I think a lot of his inventions are appreciated in retrospect. It's like people looking back at his notebooks and being like, oh wow, he invented this thing 100 years before it was actually invented, and it just died in his notebook.
Right.
And
or
it was
like
written backwards, and no one could understand what he invented until.
Or he just like didn't quite have the right resources to do it at the time or whatever. Yeah.
I wonder, it's quite an interesting thought, right? That if you're a king in Arcadia and you want something done that can't be done right now, in real life you would go to an engineer. But in Arcadia, you'd go to a wizard, wouldn't you? Like if you like, oh, I need this thing doing and the right tool doesn't exist, it's going to be much easier to get a wizard to research a spell and do it for you than it would be to go to an engineer. So I actually wonder if in reality, a world with wizards and magic would have slower technological development because there's less like need for it.
Well, I mean, it's hard to have slower. Like, what was the technological development between 0 ADE and 1000 ADE in Europe? There wasn't technological progress. There was backsliding for generations, and then
sure,
they picked back
it's
up.
An interesting idea, though, right?
Yeah,
how the existence of magic changes
I
so
think
much
instead
about
of inventing a new thing, the wizard goes and creates a new spell to accomplish this one specific task, and then
that's what I mean.
chance of
Yeah.
yeah, which is cool. I like that.
So there's
What do you
less
think-
marginal reward for being an inventor.
Mhm.
Anyway, sorry,
and I do
go on.
have my gnomes as inventors, but I try and make them so fucking annoying that like it's
Yeah.
not worth working with them. Connor's been trying to get a this like robot built for him when in shenanigans, and shenanigans left. We can do all sorts of weird shit because it's non-canon. And he's slowly got this thing working, but every time he went back, the gnome's like, oh, well, actually, I need more of these parts, and it's going to cost you twice as much as I originally said. And then he comes back a little bit later, and the gnome's like, great. We got this, but I actually redesigned the entire thing while you were away, and now it does this instead, and also I need more money because I'm out of this, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and it breaks every time you do this, and blah, 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 blah. So
I think you made a Reddit post to that.
I did. It's my favorite
Extent at one
Reddit
point. Yeah,
post
it's
about
funny,
gnomes
yeah.
building a lighthouse. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I interrupted Greg or someone that was talking. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I think we have readily established that the role technology plays in a medieval, or at least a setting that isn't medieval but apes the feel or themes of the medieval, is pretty low. But what do you guys think of a more like technomancy campaign where the role of magic and technology is kind of evolved together? You get things like the Warforged or the binding of magical spirits into just stationary objects to make them move throughout the city rapidly. Right? Do you guys find any inspiration or enjoyment out of kind of the involvement of like technological ideas that we have in the modern world, implemented in a kind of more fantastical setting?
I think it can be. Like I've got no real experience with it. Like I said, like Neal's kind of way of running D&D kind of frames my entire experience playing RPGs.
Mm-hmm. Would it interest you at all to like play in a setting like that, right? Or are you just kind of laser focused in on the world of Arcadia as we know it?
It's hard for me because I'm so invested in it at this point
Uh-huh.
in Arcadia. But yeah, I mean, like it sounds cool, right? Like it's kind of sound to me from what you've described there. It kind of sounds like the Warforged. Like what is that? Like I don't know. I can sort of like have ideas in my head of what you're talking about, but I can't think of a specific setting that represents it. But yeah, it sounds cool.
All right. Neal, what about you? Are you at all interested in the like kind of technological, like in hand with magic, the technomancy of the world? Is that something that even speaks to you at all?
No.
No.
The only
You like your medieval?
Yeah, I like my primitive tech. I don't want to live in that primitive tech forever. I mean, not in the real world, but like in game, I want to deal with that. The one caveat to that is I sort of want to run a campaign where the party is working either for like this group of dwarves or this group of gnomes who are opposed with each other, and like going around and grabbing all these supplies. And halfway through the campaign, you realize that the gnomes or the dwarves are building giant mechs that they get in, and then at the end of the campaign is like fighting dwarves and gnomes and giant mechs, which I know goes against everything else I've talked about here. But I want dwarves versus gnomes in giant robot suits, like fighting each other anime style.
Team.
Pacific Rim D&D. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm thinking like more, what do you call it? Escaflowne, or there's that stupid space one where they've got like grappling hooks and they like grab onto each other. Oh fuck, I can't remember its name.
I don't specifically remember grappling hooks, any of them I've seen, but I'm kind of an anime noob.
Yeah.
All
What
right.
about you, Ryan? How do you feel about tech? Ryan.
He's gone.
Nice.
Just ghosted us.
I'm
Lovely.
back. Repeat the question.
All right, I'm gonna get coffee while you're back.
Okay, are we taking a 2-minute break here?
Oh, really?
I'm going to.
Are we?
I'm going to go for 2 minutes.
All right.
I just took my 2-minute break and didn't tell anyone.
Guys,
Y'all
why
were
don't,
having such a nice conversation.
Nick, run off, get your coffee or whatever. Neal's already off. Ryan and I will carry the show here.
All right,
Yeah,
good luck, guys.
What were they saying about me?
Oh, we were talking about the potentiality of using kind of a technomancy approach to technology.
Yeah, that's when I
Yes.
heard that question. and
Yeah.
I walked away before I heard anyone's answer.
Well, how do
Right.
you? What's
It
your
seems
answer?
Like
I've never actually done any anything like that, I don't think. It's an interesting idea, right? So using like technology in place of magic. I don't know. I don't
Kind
know
of
that I
like where
really.
they go hand in hand, right? So instead of inventing, for example, a train, right?
Mhm.
Maybe you have a nice carriage or just a stone box that has been carved, and we've
Powered by magic.
trapped a like wind spirit in it, and so
Mhm.
we can use the magic that we've infused this with to run it around the city like a train,
Yeah.
right? You take modern sensibilities and use the magic to.
Yeah, it seems like the inevitable consequence of a magic world, but it
Mhm.
doesn't really. D&D doesn't necessarily go there.
Mhm.
I feel like Neal's been kind of resistant to that. Like with
Mhm.
the Gale campaign, I was trying to do stuff like that, and it never really went where I thought it would. Like I was trying to harness the powers of like the even just inventing things like water wheels or like using the steam from the river near Cauldron to power things. I'm trying to invent like water clocks and stuff, and none of it really stuck or got
Yeah.
much buy-in.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think it goes back to setting. Is it like in certain settings it makes sense, and a typical D&D setting it kind of feels weird. You brought up Warforged as a race. I always thought they were kind of dumb,
Yeah.
unless like the setting is supports that.
Hmm.
I've only ever seen them just like plopped into a typical D&D setting, and then it feels really out of place. Where one character just shows up as a Warforged, and it's like,
I
okay,
think they
fine.
were created as a playable race setting that was kind of Fallout inspired. It was like
Yeah,
D&D had gotten so high magic that when they fought a war, it like destroyed everything. And there's
yeah.
this kind of magical deadland, and there's this remnants of the old time, and I that's like the war
Mhm.
um, as part of it. But yeah,
Yeah, but
if you just
then
plop a Warforge into a traditional Tolkien inspired setting, it's very out of.
yeah, but and I think the trouble with the way D&D is set up is that there's a lot of things that don't make sense in the setting, but the way they're presented in the books, it feels like you can use any of them in any campaign, and it's your
Mhm.
GM who's the bad guy who won't let you show up with a tiefling or show up with a warforged or whatever, regardless of the setting.
Because these fucking
Right.
casual players don't understand the consequences of their actions. They're just willy nilly being like, oh, let me throw a tiefling into this. It's going to be fine. Can I be a half dragon, half vampire necromancer? It's fine. Look, someone did it once upon a time in a Reddit post that I saw. And you're like, God damn it, my world's more complicated and nuanced than that. Yeah. Fucking casual players.
I have a lot of players in my Saturday that kind of refuse to play a human, or like a very basic. And so I've had a pixie, I've had a satyr, I've had a Azamar, who was reborn after death, and like I have found that although I kind of started mostly believing what you do, Neal, and that like, hey, we'll just keep it kind of basic races because that's the ones I'm most familiar with, the ones I kind of enjoy and I've built my world around. Having a kind of like individual fantastical element is, I think, kind of stretching as a DM, right? It allows me to kind of think about how people may interact with this minotaur running around in the
Mhm.
middle of a predominantly dwarven human city, or this Azamar who's was a dwarf but now is this reborn angel after death. And while there is some uh, lack of verisimilitude, there's also a lot of room for kind of like growing as a DM. I've grown to kind of appreciate that challenge. Although I do think I would appreciate it if we could mainstream a little more the next time one of them
Yeah.
dies.
My biggest issue with it is when it takes a or it players use it instead of developing a character. Where so they use it as a crutch. So instead of trying to create an interesting character, they're like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm a pixie and that's my shtick.
Mm.
Right.
Whereas if you're a human, I mean, not that there's like, yeah, fantasy races are fine,
Mhm.
but if you're human, it kind of forces you to come up with other things that are interesting about you. Whereas if you're playing a fantasy race, it's easy to fall into letting that be your thing or like stopping the character development there.
Right.
So-
Yeah. I think that's a really great point. Because one of my favorite characters in this Saturday show is the Azamar, actually. Like, he has this whole life that he's lived and then has like kind of restarted as an adventurer somehow. And he's had a lot of opportunity to kind of show this growth in character away from this kind of stodgy cleric that didn't do anything exciting his whole life, and not even a cleric, just a priest. And grow since death. I think as long as you are willing to continue to grow your character, really the magical race doesn't matter. But when you use it as a crutch, that's when I think we have this negative reaction, because you and Neal and I and Nick to some extent played a lot of D&D, and we've seen these people be like, "Oh yeah, I'm an elf. I'm Legolas." You know.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, if I could start Arcadia over again, I would get rid of dwarves, halflings. I'd get rid of all the sub races.
Which eventually, yeah.
It would be a human dominant world, and like if they were dwarves, they would be like the NPC others, you know, like goblins or
a mythical race.
Right,
Yeah.
they would be these other things, and everyone would just be humans, and we'd scrap all the sub races.
The trouble with that is D&D is built and balanced around the sub races providing the variety of character. So you'd have to redesign the system to make it interesting, right?
I don't
think so?
agree. No, I don't agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, my issue is that you
Like
play
so much of the Go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was so many of the options at character creation are designed around choosing your race and choosing your class. And I think the game starts to lose depth when you say, okay, ignore the whole first chapter, you can only play a human.
Well,
And ignore half of the second chapter, bards are dumb. And so are druids, and basically you can only play a fighter.
Everyone should just play human fighters. I agree.
It's just that you laugh, but that's Neal's ideal there, really.
Well, but
Yeah.
here's the issue: is that there's the false choice here. People are like, "Oh, I could play we're just gonna stick with fighters for now, but I can play a human fighter or a dwarf fighter or a halfling fighter or an elf fighter," and then they pick it. And then they play it the exact same way, regardless of their subrace. Maybe like if they're a dwarf, they'll like to drink and they'll be angry. And if they're an elf, they're going to be like haughty and aloof. And it's just like one minor personality trait attached to their character that like becomes their race. And then it becomes more of just like, well, I want to play this because I want these mechanical advantages. And I'm not playing a dwarf. I'm playing someone with +1 con, so I can get 19 con, so I can get +5 to my HP. And it doesn't seem like a real choice. It seems just like a bunch of bullshit for mechanics. And why don't you just play a human with these same traits? And what if we like change
That's sort
the way
of what
that
I
our
was suggesting is to make that a viable campaign. Probably
I wonder
maybe a
if
human subrace or
people who can't play interesting fairy race or like magic probably can't play.
You're right. You're cutting out a bit again, Greg.
Yeah, I
sorry.
can't hear you, man.
I wonder if the people who can't play a good magical race are the same type of people that can't play like interesting humans. Like maybe they would just have a personality quirk, like they like to drink, and that's just it, even if they played a human. I wonder if that might be a player issue as much as it is a
Yeah.
I would hesitate to even call it an issue. I think it's a trap that newer players fall into.
Sure, yeah, that's a much better way to phrase it.
Right, and I think it comes with experience, and I kind of hesitate to hate too much on newer players that fall into these tropes, right? Because it's kind of a thing you go through. And the first 4E character I made was Dragon, because I opened the book and it was right there. It was an option. It's like, why the hell would I not play a dragon?
Totally.
Yeah.
Because I get a free breath weapon and I get +1 strength. Duh.
Yeah, I just want to. Maybe it's because I've been doing this so long and like this is all I do basically, and I've like I shouldn't say outgrown, but like I've played with these tropes for so fucking long. I want more like nuance, and maybe I'm just like projecting my desire for nuance.
Yeah, we had the advantage of playing our min-maxed characters off screen when we were 12 years old, and no one got to see us make these dumb Mary Sue's.
Yeah.
Just to pull up on something you said there, Neal. You said, all elves are snooty, all dwarves are angry. Is that actually a thing? Are all dwarves angry? Because I feel like
No,
you're,
but all PC dwarves are angry or grumpy and like ale and mead. You know,
'Cause I don't know though. I
There's
feel
also
like every
happy and
single
dopey and
angry.
sleepy.
exactly.
opinion.
You know, like I would like to see other dwarven tropes being taken. Like I want to see the person play the dwarf who's like fiercely loyal and hard to befriend. You know, or like has the perspective of like, well, I'm 100 years old. Why don't we like not rush this decision and take some time, because I've seen how things like how time affects things, like or the perspective of someone being really short and being like, well, why don't we solve this problem by, I'm sure there's like a perspective of shortness that could apply here, or taking into account that maybe I don't want to play this giant creature because my size will get in the way when we need to crawl through X, Y, and Z, rather than someone being like, I want to play a half ogre, and then the party has to like sneak into something and the half ogre just won't fit into the building. And so now I have to come up with a bullshit reason why we can fit the half ogre into the building so the campaign can continue. Like the decision to make the half ogre is really limiting because your size is so awkward and uncomfortable. Also, side tangent, why the fuck can halflings have 18 strength or 17 strength? They're like 3 feet tall. It's bullshit. Strength system needs to be reworked.
Or actually, there are limitations on.
Yeah, but the limitations are
race.
17 or 18. It's really broken.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting discussion, but I was just trying to make a comment about all your dwarves being assholes.
Oh, well, they're not assholes. They are slow to like people, and all my PCs are like, oh, you don't like me yet? Fuck you, dwarf. Or the dwarf is like,
why, every now and again, shouldn't there be a happy-go-lucky dwarf who gets on with everyone real easily?
they have existed from time
Have
to
they?
time.
Have they?
Yeah.
I must have missed that.
Well, it's because you are super racist against all dwarves. You know, you have like 1 or 2 bad experiences, and now every dwarf you meet is a fucking dick right off the bat.
Two bad experiences already.
I think that we get a little too caught up, though, in the mechanical 18 strength and what it means. I think that letting a small person have 18 strength is not the end of the world, because I think you could really just think about it as a like strongest of his people type, right? There's always outliers that are incredibly strong, or incredibly fast, or incredibly anything. All right, and if you're really concerned about the 400-pound ogre being weaker than the 150-pound halfling, I think what you really should do is just allow the 18 to work mechanically as it does, right? And just rationalize it as he is the strongest of his race. When used with like this weapon, he gets this damage modifier, this plus modifier. And yeah, occasionally you might come up with a situation where the ogre fails to lift a door and the halfling does. But that is a time to give some really nice narrative, like fun, right? And allow your players to kind of flex themselves in a enjoyable role-playing manner, right? And less of a like issue to be solved, right? Just because the 18 strength halfling is like mechanically just slightly better than the 17 strength ogre, it doesn't necessarily mean he's raw physically able to lift more, right? In the mechanics as we've created them.
Yeah. The trouble in D&D is it doesn't allow flexibility, right? It has a very specific table that says if you have 18 strength, you can press 400 and exactly this many pounds over your head and take one step, right? So it doesn't allow for you to be the strongest halfling. It's like the strongest halfling is exactly as strong as the strongest. Well, not halfling's a bad example because I don't think they can get exceptional strength. But
no,
I don't.
You get what I mean? Like the strongest elf is exactly as strong as the strongest human or the strongest half ogre.
Yeah,
I just think that there's way too much concern about, oh my god, my halfling can bench press 400 pounds, and the amount of times it comes up in play is 0.
Yeah.
It doesn't come up in play because we try and ignore the problem. The same thing, like the halfling armor weighs the same amount as the ogre armor. Somehow they both need like 40 pounds of iron to cover their body in chainmail.
It doesn't.
I know. It's just
it's a It's a mechanical simplification.
Yeah.
Right. The halfling armor weighs 40 pounds worth of halfling carrying capacity.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking about it, Greg. As you were talking before, I'd never thought of it like that. But
then why does it cost the same?
It costs the same.
It costs the same because economics aren't real economics. It's a simplification
Yeah,
to
but
make the
then
game more fun to
when
play.
my human fighter picks up the halfling wearing the armor, I still count the halfling armor towards the encumbrance of the human who's now carrying the halfling. Like,
Right.
I
And
see
how
what
many
you're
times have
saying.
you picked up? How many times do you pick up a halfling in the course of a game?
Fucking all
It's
the
not
time,
very-
man.
Every
My players
game
are
there's a
always
halfling.
they always are riding people's shoulders, man.
And that's fine.
I mean,
In some ways,
the whole
I was gonna-
strength.
In some ways,
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Ryan. I talked too
I was
much
just saying,
anyway.
in some ways, I think 5e does this better in that the stats are a little more, they're less quantitative. I mean, you do get like
Yeah.
the factors of your strength, but it doesn't. There's no weird ass table like there are in 2e. It's like
Yeah.
if you've got 18 strength, it doesn't really carrying capacity basically gets ignored. It's only there to give you a +5 to damage.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes it easier to gloss over these details that you can kind of get bogged down in.
Yeah. And we do, despite my complaints and arguments and whining, we still very successfully play with halflings that have 18 strength, like all the time. And if you just
You just need
ignore
to
these
make sure they
problems
feel
and
bad.
don't look at it, it's fine. And I'm just
Well, and
cranky
I think that
and
they're
old.
not nearly as much of a problem. I guess I wanted this on record, I guess, because I've seen this argument a lot, and I think it's because we are a community that plays 2e, and 2e is a very I want to be as realistic as possible system, even though it's an abstraction.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's not as much of a problem as you think. And I don't think it's something that comes up in play that much. And it's something that I think is fun to play around with, right? Like in that edge case scenario where the halfling bends the bars and the ogre doesn't, that's an opportunity for you at the table to have a good time and engage in some role playing.
I completely agree. I'm just a grumpy old man, and I'm like, this world doesn't make sense. How can the halflings be as strong as the ogres? It's nonsensical, everybody. They need to have different armor, and the rings should be smaller on the halflings because they have smaller hands, so it should actually be better armor. But then they should also be thinner because they're smaller, and so it shouldn't be as good against this type. So you should have bonuses for halflings against piercing weapons, but then penalties against slashing weapons, and it's too much.
It makes
I'm
sense
just a
for you
cranky
to
old
look up on
man.
it though, right? Because it's your world, and your number one goal is internal consistency. So it's bound to bother you more than it's gonna bother anyone else watching.
Yeah, these are things I just like to bitch about.
Yeah, that's fair. I like to think of D&D and really not even just D&D, just all RPG systems as abstractions for convenience sake. And while we will try to dig down into kind of mechanics and realism in some instances, it's helpful to know that ultimately what we're doing is we're playing a game. And those abstractions are necessary to help you play it and enjoy it.
Totally.
And yeah, I think that's just an important note to sometimes keep in your mind, because I see really contentious arguments about stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, you're right? All these points you're making kind of make sense, and I see them, but at the same time, we should maybe just enjoy the system.
Totally, because there's always a balance between fantasy and realism, and if you get too close to realism, the game becomes way too hard to run, and then also kind of boring, because then what? It's like, all right, the tax man's coming to your house. Did you do your finances right? Are you hiding anything? Are you going to trigger an IRS investigation? Let's roll for investigation.
Can I be a shenanigans villain named the tax man?
Sure, maybe. Actually, I just recently figured out how taxes work. At a certain point, each person was paying taxes. Now the government only collects its taxes from landowners, and so no one else has to pay taxes, and that way it's a little bit easier and more realistic. Side note.
Solid.
And because all our PCs are hobos, we'll never.
Yeah, the people pay money up the chain, and that money then gets taxed, and rather than the individual people being taxed, people like adventurers sort of get away with never having to pay taxes. Whereas,
just wait until we institute an income tax on those adventurers.
Yeah,
the taxman striketh.
Neal, I just clicked on your feed me link. Thenthuk. I've never even heard of
Oh,
that.
fucking tentuk? Oh my god. It is Tibetan broad noodle soup, and it is
Damn, that looks
so
good.
fucking delicious. It is the best soup I've ever had in my life. There's this tiny ass hole in the wall just down the street from me. It's called Tibet Kitchen. The building is like a dirty mess. There's like some broken windows in the back that have been like taped over with duct tape. Their signs are like 20 years old. The place looks like it's infested with rats, but it's so fucking delicious. It's so good.
There's a Tibetan kitchen near me.
So fucking good.
Himalayan.
So
Alright, sick.
Does whoever's feeding you get to choose what you eat? Or do
Yeah.
you have like a wish list put together? And
Well, click on the link. Yeah, so if you click on the what's it called? There's two links here. The treat stream link, right? You click on that, you can pick some food, and it'll automatically like you buy it, and it'll pay all the things, and then it'll just show up in my house a little bit later. But treat stream charges like they take like a surprisingly large cuts, like 20 or 30%, which is
How
bullshit.
many times has people actually sent you food?
All the time, man. All
Like,
the
Too
time.
much? Is it ever like you're sitting there and like 5 meals show up? And
They put there's a cooldown that I can set, so you can only do it every so many hours, and I have currently set at once every 4 hours. But I can get rid of that and get spammed with food.
But seriously though, like how often are we talking? Like once a week? More?
Yeah, I would say we average once a week. Sometimes it's like twice a day or 3 times a week. Sometimes it's not at all
That's
for
so
a couple
funny.
weeks.
Like when GTC was on, were you just getting like fucking takeaways
no, 'cause-
delivered all the time?
No, because it doesn't show up in other people's chats, only in my chat.
Ah, shit.
Yeah, and then the better option is, I shouldn't say the better, but the more economical option is just like, here's $20, order yourself food, which is, then I gotta stop and pick up the food and do the delivery and everything. But then you don't have to pay the fucking stupid 30% that TreatStream charges, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's just the cost to the plebs, isn't it? Doesn't matter. It's easier for you. So if
Yeah,
you just
it makes
turn
it
up-
easy for me. Yeah. That's
Awesome. You know what I think our final topic should be? Is not D&D related. But let us describe in detail our favorite food. What is your favorite food?
It's hard to say, man. I don't know.
meat.
Kind of means it, right? Just like a steak.
Steak's nice. I'm imagining a nice juicy brisket right now. And
Like,
it's
like
just
American
slow
barbecue.
smoked.
That is the shit, yeah.
I'm
and
thinking-
the fat's all liquefied and just intercalated into the
Yeah.
meat
American
fibers.
barbecue is amazing, I have to say.
Mhm.
That is.
Are you
Give me some tri-tip.
familiar? I'm sorry. I
Tri-tip-
apologize for
Tri-tip's
running all
pretty,
over
pretty
you.
classic.
No, I talked over you, Greg. I interrupted you, buddy.
We talked over each other.
I want to know if Nick is familiar. He calls it American barbecue. Are
Yeah.
you familiar with the different like barbecues in America? Right? Like, are you familiar with
Yeah.
Texas versus Louisiana versus Memphis versus?
I'm
like,
probably
Tennessee?
more familiar than you would imagine, but probably not like super.
Yeah.
familiar.
Dude,
But
I'm not
but
even
people-
familiar
we-
with that.
We call barbecue barbecue is a thing in the UK, right? But it just means like what you would call grilling.
Yeah, Americans
Same,
are pretty
same.
bad about that. They'll often say barbecue. Well, uneducated. I don't know. Yeah,
There are
unenlightened
many
will say
Americans
say
that
barbecue
are-
generically when
Yes.
usually they mean grilling.
Well, that's
Barbe-
what we mean in English by it. So actually, maybe it's
What's the difference
Right.
between barbecue and grilling then? 'Cause apparently-
Barbecue is like
Well,
it's
we don't
like
have your
smoked
barbecue.
over actual like
Yeah.
wood, right?
So the best way to think about it is if you were on your like traditional grill and you place your meat directly on the like above the flame, you're
Mhm.
not barbecuing. If you have the flame and you've heated the grill and you place your meat off centered from the flame, like away from it, so it's not directly being heated, you're basically barbecuing.
low and slow. Right?
Okay,
You're
so what
cooking it at a low temperature for a
Basically.
long time, and you're infusing it with smoke flavor. for a
What
long
we've
time.
always done, and so you can tell me whether I'm grilling or barbecuing here, is you get the coals hot, then you push them to either side of the barbecue holding machine thingy, and then you put the
This is-
meat in the center, and that way it gets nice and evenly everywhere. Was that grilling or
No, but
barbecue?
That's still grilling though, because you're talking about like cooking like a steak, like what Ryan was talking about brisket. You would have to cook that for like 16 hours.
It's
I
fucking.
mean, you could grill that. You could put it on a grill.
Sure,
Right.
yeah, but to barbecue a brisket takes 16 hours, like more perhaps.
Yeah.
So
You're
and I
you're
think-
getting closer to barbecuing at that point, Neil, but you're basically there. The point of barbecue is it's not directly on the heat, and it is slower, and it is infusing it with the smoke.
Okay.
So yeah, you're doing it probably as best as you can with like out investing in a smoker or like an actual barbecue pit.
But it's to do with the meat you buy, I would say, right? Because if you're buying a steak, you wouldn't want to.
You can
smoke it
barbecue
for 50.
most any meat.
Okay, I guess you could, but the key thing is like you couldn't really grill a pork shoulder, but you could barbecue a pork shoulder, smoke it for 12 hours, and make pulled pork.
Yeah.
Oh, pulled pork sliders, man, that's the shit.
Yes, it is. That is the shit. But it's all over the UK, and it's never actually like cooked like barbecue. Which I did do it once. I bought an offset smoker and did it. It took me all day, but it was amazing.
Nice.
Yeah. You can make pretty good pulled pork in like a pressure cooker.
Yeah,
We've been doing that a lot. Yeah. But instant
that.
pot pulled pork.
just like liquid smokes. You ever use that?
No, I would. No,
I haven't tried it. but I've
that's
seen it in
cheating.
recipes.
I don't know. I would rather just not worry about the smoke flavor. Why fake it?
Yeah, it's a different thing though, right? I guess. I mean, it's similar in terms of its result, but different. But last night I went to, because I was, like I said before, I was in Bristol for the weekend for my girlfriend's birthday. We went to this amazing like Spanish tapas restaurant. That's a good type of food. Like Spanish food is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you get Spanish food over there? Like you think Spanish food's Mexican food, right? But that's not what I mean.
We do not think
We don't
Spanish
think
food
it
is
is. I
Mexican
don't think
food.
There are tapas bars, but it's not very. Yes, there's not a lot of Spanish food here, at least on the
No.
West Coast.
I have
I
some
must-
cousins who grew up in Spain and are Spanish, so I've had quite a bit of Spanish food, but only because I've got family from Spain.
Right. Okay.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah, it's good. I like
I
it.
couldn't tell you what it's fucking called, but it's delicious. And when we were in Spain, they would order like delivery, and the delivery would come in these giant fucking like electric grill pans, and they would just like deliver the pan that everything was cooked in to your house. And they had like
sounds
10
like
of these
paella,
things,
right?
like paella. And they had like
Yeah.
10 of these things just like stacked up in their kitchen. I'm like, don't they want them back? And like, yeah, every now and then we return a whole bunch of them to them, but they just like give us the pan, and it's expected to be returned one day, maybe. Which I
See,
thought was the
think
weirdest shit.
I mean, I'm no expert, but when you make paella, as you put it, Neil,
I don't know what it's
the
called.
crust that forms on the bottom of the rice to the pan is the best bit of the dish, and by taking it out of it and serving it in like a takeaway carton, you would ruin that. So I can imagine that's probably why they do it, to preserve the crust. I can't remember the name of it, but
Oh yeah, I've also had this like really good thinly sliced beef in
Is it
Madrid.
called frito?
I don't
the
fucking
crust, it might be.
Yeah, frito, like fried, like Spanish fried.
Yeah, it
I
might
think
be.
it's
I
called
don't know.
frito.
Frito. Neil, are you sure it was beef and
Mm.
not pork? Because Spanish, like Iberico ham or El Pata Negra, is the really good stuff. That is
I don't know.
phenomenal.
God, I'm trying to remember this thing from like 2004 when I was on this trip, and I don't remember. I think it was beef, but it was like really thinly sliced, and they would just bring like a rock to your table that was so fucking hot. And you just like throw your meat on the rock with
Okay.
everyone
Oh,
else,
that
and you
sounds
chat about it and like throw your own salt on it and whatnot. And I'm sure the rock had nothing to do with the flavoring of it, but that meat was so good. And you cook it as much or as little as you want at the table right in front of you, and it would cook really quickly. So it was like combination Korean barbecue, I guess, with same sort of style. You know, you cook at your table.
Sure, we
So
don't really
good.
have that here, Korean
Oh my
barbecue.
God,
but
so
I know what you mean.
good.
That's not what I was talking about. Then I guess that is different. But I'm talking about like it's like aged like pig leg to make like a ham, and then they.
Oh,
they
I know.
slice it
Yeah. My
thin.
cousin had a bunch of those pig legs hanging in her window. I didn't
Yeah,
really go near
that
them.
is so good.
Yeah.
So good.
What about you, Greg? What's your favorite food?
All right, Texas style barbecue's in my blood. So I
I'm so jealous that
I
you
will
live there.
agree with.
Oh.
Yeah. I got a good bit of that. Going down to the state line is awesome. But I will say that I think that my favorite is the southwestern style Mexican food, right? The style you get in the Southwest, because in different places of Mexico they have different chilies and different ways of preparing things. And I lived in El Paso, which of course is one of the largest international metropolitan areas when combined with Juarez. and we lived in the land of the hatch chili. Hatch chili is prepared in most of the Mexican food there, and so I am very snobbish when it comes to Mexican food. I'm actually very upset because somebody brought a Southwestern style Mexican food restaurant to Portland, and we went in to try it. And we were just like, God, you've bungled this. This is not authentic enough at all for our tastes. But that style of Mexican food, you get those like nice cheesy, like runny enchiladas. You get all the wonderful chilies in there.
Mexican food's amazing, and we just don't get real like what you're talking about. We don't get really good Mexican food in the
You
UK.
can't even
It's 'cause
really
you
get
can't
it.
the chilies right.
Oh yeah, even in the Northwest, the Mexican food.
Really?
Sucks.
You know, I was
There's-
thinking because the best barbecue I've ever had was I was in America last year, and you're gonna laugh probably, Greg. It was in Venice. I was staying in Venice Beach in LA, and I found like this place today. I mean, I had a good write on that, and it was like so amazing. I can't imagine like how good it is actually in like bumfuck nowhere in Texas or wherever you would go to get good barbecue. Sorry,
No, I think that's a real city in Texas, actually. It's right next to Humble. We have a joke in Texas that all of the people that went to school in Waco lived in Lubbock, and all of the people that went to school in Lubbock lived in Waco. Is because there is nothing in Waco or Lubbock. Like it is that like it is there. It's a college town, but that's fucking it, man.
Yeah, it's funny the US like that because in the UK you're never far away from. I mean, you're pretty much never far away from like London or like a major city, but there's like places in the US that just literally there's nothing there, right?
Well, yeah, it's because the UK top to bottom, including Scotland, is like smaller than California.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, it's funny.
We will happily drive 3 hours for, an afternoon and then drive 3 hours back home when you're done.
Yeah, exactly. And you could get, from Manchester, you could get, not anywhere, but you could get pretty far in the UK in 3 hours in any direction.
Shit. Top to bottom, the UK is like 530 miles. California, top to bottom, is 740 miles.
California's long and thin, though.
So is the UK.
So is the UK.
Not as thin as California, though, right? The UK's wide.
No, UK's way thinner than California.
Really?
At its widest point, the UK is 290 miles, if we don't include Northern Ireland. And at its widest point, California is 380 miles.
Fair enough, Mom.
Suck it.
America's big, innit?
Yeah.
Hey, that's fine. You can be big and, inefficient. That's fine. I mean, imagine if the UK if we just scaled our economy up by the size of Alcatraz.
Well, you guys have a couple thousand-year head start on us, all right?
Yeah, you took all our best bits. We sent the good ones. Actually, we didn't. Like, it was those like puritanical crazy bastards that went over to the US, right?
Yeah, and people who were starving
because they were annoyed that everyone was being too ungodly.
The US was basically like all the rejects from Europe came to the United States, and the extremely poor people who were starving, and they were just like such hard workers because they were rejected from everywhere else that they did great things.
Mm-hmm. And then
now we don't let in
and took it all for yourselves. Was that us? Who do you blame? Do you blame the American side? Do you blame the British? Because I guess that was still Britain at the time.
It was Britain at the time. It was Britain and Spain at the time, but we sort of take that on as our own responsibility now, even though a lot of it happened in American times. Because like once it was the United States instead of like colonial territory, the killings did not stop.
Yeah, sure.
If we had stopped it, we would have blamed you guys, but it just, the genocide continued.
It carried on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a very somber note. Let's talk about something else.
Thanks, Nick. Way to go from like halfling strength to genocide of the native people. Okay, hold on. We got to talk about genocide a little bit more. I live on Arapaho. Hold on, it's worth it. Arapaho Street is named after the Arapaho tribe that lived in the area that I am. But I don't know who the fuck thought this was a great idea. A few blocks from me, there is a restaurant called Mustard's Last Stand, and it's a hot dog restaurant, but that's a play on words from Custer's Last Stand. And Custer was an American general who like was known for slaughtering innocent Native Americans, like butchering them. And so some fucking asshole builds on Arapaho Mustard's Last Stand, and it's just like,
I mean, it's punny, if a bit
it's
insensitive.
punny, but it's really
It's like
dickish.
What more
It's
do you
like-
expect from? At the risk of offending everyone else on this call and the 68, 67 now, or one of them's already left, Americans watching, like, is that not? That's just what I expect from America, right? Flag waving, chanting USA. Yo, we want to battle. We killed you. Fuck you guys. We're the best.
You wouldn't have like Jew Street and then put some sort of like Auschwitz pun restaurant on Jew Street, right? It would be terrible. It's fucked up. That's exactly what we're doing right here. That's exactly what the Mustard's Last Stand on Arapaho Street is.
They wouldn't do that in Europe. But
I'm just saying, it's
You
the
could get away
same
with that
fucking
in
thing.
America.
Yeah, you put that in the right town in Texas. No one would even get the joke. Like, where the fuck?
Whoa!
It's the same thing. It's fucked up, man.
No, I agree with you. It's fucked up. You guys
Yeah.
should take a look at yourselves.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Mister, we're gonna free the slaves, but then like pay all the slave owners. Like, Mister, reparations for the slave owners, not
Yeah,
for the slaves.
No, I'm
Come
against
on.
that shit.
All right.
Britain practically invented colonialism, or at least they prefer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't talk to us about slaughtering the innocents.
That was the British. That was a different country, though, right? That was the British Empire, doesn't exist anymore. Totally different country. Slate wiped clean. Slate wiped clean.
All
It made
right.
me laugh, Ryan, when you came over to the London Museum and you were like, there's like about 50 countries that I never have to go to now because I've seen all that stuff.
All the good stuff, at least.
Yeah. It's funny because every now and again, like those governments write to the UK, and ask for it back, and I think they just get ignored.
Yeah. Well, the usual argument is you can't be trusted with stuff.
Yeah.
Get your country in order, stabilize things, and then maybe we'll see your priceless relics.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's better here where more people can see them. No one wants to go to your
All
country.
right. Let's move away from genocide and terrible history things. Let's talk about something more fun before we wrap this up for the day.
Oh, well, I kind of thought that the favorite foods might carry us to 12, but we didn't quite get there.
Viewership is just plummeting.
Is it? Oh, that's fine.
Is it actually? It's actually no. It's
I don't know.
Who's paying attention to viewership? I don't even know what it's at.
Oh, man.
you know, at the risk of no. Okay, watch that one. So
No. Moving on. Moving on.
Rather than digging into a deeper topic again, maybe we should just stay kind of
Keep talking about food.
a little closer to home. Traveling is something that I'm always jealous of seeing, and I know that Neal, you've traveled over and over and over and over, and Nick has the opportunity to travel throughout Europe relatively easily from where he lives. Maybe not so much in the future, but
yeah, right. Yeah. No, I can get French citizenship. I'll be all right.
Oh, there you go. And I guess I am someone who has gone on an exchange program to Costa Rica, but has largely not been able to, go explore the world. And I might not be able to much. So I want to know, right, what is like the premier destination when I save up enough to finally go travel, right? Where is your favorite experience traveling abroad from you three? And like, what is the like ideal like trip to see all the best stuff?
Well,
Nowhere.
just go to London and visit the British Royal Museum and things from all the fallen empires.
It's funny you should ask that. Sorry, let me go first, Neal.
Yeah,
Because my favorite trip that I've taken is to America, actually, which I suppose wouldn't mean much to you, Greg. But it depends what you're after. But I think bang for your buck, if you're trying to take one long flight and see as much as you can. I mean, I think you're gonna struggle to beat going to Europe, like to Paris or Berlin and buying a thing called an Interrail pass, which is basically like free travel across all the trains across Europe, and the train networks are good in Central Europe. You could go to Berlin, you could go to Paris, you could go to Madrid, Barcelona, Rome, Florence. And you could do all of that in like a month. Like, I know that's how your holidays work, right? You like save up one day a year for like the next 40 years, and you get one holiday. That's mad, that right? Though you know, it's like minimum 20 holidays a year in the UK, and it's.
I
more in
don't
France.
know
Fucking
of
communists.
anyone in my area that could afford to take a month vacation. Like I
Yeah,
don't know of
yes,
anyone
yeah.
that could do that.
You know, I have traveled a lot. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I have found that when I try to like go somewhere and see some cool shit, I don't really enjoy it nearly as much. I would say if you want to like really enjoy yourself while traveling, it's more about, what do you want to say? It's not about like going and seeing specific sites. It's more about hanging out with people in their own areas and having them like go show you shit. Like I've been to the
Hard to
Louvre
do
a
for
few
most people,
times. I've been to the Louvre a few times, and like, sure, it's cool, it's pretty, whatever, fuck it. But like the time that I spent walking around some bumfuck town in Switzerland, where I don't know anything going on here, was way more interesting than like the time I spent looking at, you know, beautiful works
Yeah.
of art in fancy museums. And to be honest, there's so much cool shit in the United States. I don't really feel like you need to travel internationally to see cool shit. The only real benefit I've gotten from traveling internationally is sort of getting this like wholesome whole picture view of the world as just like, the people over here in Romania are just as much of assholes as the people back home. And they're also fucking cool. These Romanian guys are fucking badass. Oh my God, they still have like, they're still using horse-drawn carts to travel around. That's kind of weird, but like, and they have conspiracy theories about giants living in their mountains and the CIA is keeping it secret from them. That's kind of cool, but like, you know, visiting Dracula's castle was awesome, but like not as cool as seeing, you know, as talking with the people. So in a sort of an elitist way, I think that the traveling is less about where you go and what you see and more about the people you meet. And I know that's kind of hokey.
Culture, right?
It's kind of hokey,
Not
but
just the
like
people,
that's
it's the
true.
culture.
Yeah, but you don't get to know the culture without the people. Like
But
they
you're
are
in a
the
lucky situation that you were able to go to all of these countries and have people there willing to like show you around. Like, you know, not everyone's got that
I
when
know.
they go away.
I'm truly blessed.
So, but like, I think that even if you are not being shown around by a local, which is great, you know, just going to Barcelona and sitting out on the street and eating like tapas and watching how things move over there, it's going to be so different to Austin or like San Francisco or
Yeah.
New
Mhm.
York.
The U.S.
So there's
does
an
not
element
have
to
that. The U.S. does not have that depth of culture and history. So I guess it depends what you're after.
But
What do
if
you-
I can give a specific recommendation, Greg, if you ever get to Europe, go to this town called Dusseldorf in Germany. They make this type of beer there called alt beer, and there's like 4 breweries in the whole place that make it. I mean, I'm thinking you can get like fake versions around, but I'm telling you that is the best beer going, and I love Dusseldorf.
Are you
Alright,
saying there's
beer.
fake news alt-right beer in Dusseldorf?
What?
What? No, it's not alt right. It's just alt beer.
Well, there's got to be an alt. There's got to be a beer on the left and a beer on the right, and someone's faking it. So
And then we drink them both.
I have to say, I appreciate the history of German beer making, but I feel like right now some of the best beer in the world is getting
yeah,
the west coast of the U.S.
Yeah, there's great beer.
Definitely.
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
No, it's really nice living in Portland because there's so much local.
Yeah, right. You can
brew.
go get an alt beer down the street.
Yeah.
Is it
Save
though?
your-
It's not.
save
If
your
it's
time.
not from Uriga, it's not real alt beer. You know, there's like 4 breweries in the whole of Dusseldorf that make it, and the recipe's a secret. So anything else is just a
Did,
you know,
did
an
PDX
approximation.
Pints make his name just so that he could chime in?
I hope so. I really love the fact that PDX Pints happened to like pop up right as we were talking about Portland beers.
no, the account's been
Maybe he's
around
a
since
fan.
2015. It's been here.
It's just a fan.
He's had it for years, dude.
Just
I
like
think- I think
Cheers.
We might have to like meet at a brewery, PDX, and have some pints.
Is PDX an area in your brewery in your region?
PDX is the like abbreviation for the, or it's the what do you call that? The airport code or whatever?
Oh, the
For
Portland airport code. Okay,
Yeah, and so we use it as shorthand for the Portland, and it's like local area.
cool, nice.
Can we talk about how you guys, your pints are too small?
How big are
Fucking-
your pints?
That threw me off. I like 568 milliliters.
So so a typical pint is 16 ounces, but I think an imperial pint is 19, 20.
20 ounces. Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go, guys. So
So yep.
That kind of threw me
But
off.
your beers are also so much weaker.
Are they though?
Oh,
They
shots
are.
fired.
I
Are
mean,
they?
Not that that's a bad. Not that it's a bad.
I
What's
think
the-
that's true.
we
Like
could
if
get
you
too
if you're
far.
looking if you're talking about British like ale, like what you know. Like
What's
British-
a like
yes, we'll get, like,
traditional
IPAs
British
and stuff
ale?
like that.
Well, hold on. Also, what's
I
the
don't think
cost of
I've-
a pint? Like, if you go down to your local bar right now, I guess you call them pubs, and you were to get a
Yeah.
pint, how much would it cost you?
Okay, so there's two pubs I could go to. If I go to the Georgian Dragon and get a pint of Foster's, which is like shit lager, that might
Oh,
cost
what?
me
That's-
£3.50.
No. I'm talking about good beer,
That's-
not mass-produced crap.
Okay, so like £5.50.
Okay.
I'd say on average.
That's about the same.
That's about the
Yeah,
same.
it's-
Beer here would
yeah, it's
cost
the same.
$5 to $7.
$5 to $7 for a pint. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And the
But
pound
we
and the
get more
dollar are about the
pints
same
probably.
now, so that's a good comparison.
No, not quite.
I know all of Nick's buttons. You talk about the weakness of the pound compared to the dollar, and it'll set him off every time.
125 it is currently.
So I want to know, like, what's a good British beer, right? Like, if I was gonna get an English beer, what would it be? Because the only things that I've drunk from across the pond are a Newcastle like brown ale.
Yeah, Newcastle
And-
Brown's pretty nice though, to be fair.
Is it
That's-
okay? And I've
that's
had a
okay.
Guinness, and that's about it.
But like, there's a difference between buying Nuki Brown in a bottle and like, because I think I don't know, do you get this, Ryan, over there with your beer? But you know, like the pumps, like the bitter pumps that we have in the UK. I don't know
Mhm.
how to describe it, but like, it's
A
not as
tap?
carbonated as real beer. No, it's
No.
not like you don't flick it on, and it comes out. You've got to like pump it down, and it comes out, and you might have to.
Oh,
pump, like,
yeah.
4 or
I
5
feel- I
times
remember
to fill
seeing
the
that.
pints.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a thing. They're
So it's a
usually
different type of beer.
pressurized caps. Yeah,
It's
it was
a cask,
different.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's a cask, and instead of having it under CO2 or nitrogen, you're pumping it on
Yeah.
the tap lever.
So I think if you're going
Yeah.
to drink British beer, like really, that's what I think a foreigner would think is British beer. Like
I guess
we
I
get,
w-
we
yeah, I
get like
wasn't-
IPAs
yeah.
and stuff that are nice, but it's just the same as you get anywhere else.
Yeah. Okay.
That is
Should
your
we- should
greatest
I-
contribution to the world, I think, is the invention of the IPA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
pretty good.
probably the best thing you guys have ever done.
It's the best thing about colonialism, I guess, that's happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The
you
best
should get a
part.
hobgoblin beer.
Yeah, Hobgoblin. You know, there's a music shop by me called Hobgoblin Music, and it's the exact same logo as that's on the Hobgoblin beer. And I wonder if it's like just
Is it
owned by the
related, or
same
did they
guys.
just rip it off?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I might try and Google it.
Well, we think we're out of time here for some chit chat. I know we could probably keep going, but let's keep it short and sweet so people will want to come back.
It's been
Um,
fun.
All right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Any
I
XP, Neal?
EXP.
I don't know.
I'm glad you liked it, Greg. All right.
That killed me. That was so funny.
Thank you.
But I figure we'll use
Wait.
Sundays for Hardcore Heroes and Homeward Bound and Chit Chat sort of alternatingly at whatever rate happens. So, yeah.
It's been fun.
It's been good.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, absolutely.
That's it? Do we just end now? How does this work?
I think so. Thanks for
I
listening.
think we just sign off. Yeah. We need a catchy sign off, like
Oh, yeah.
A jingle.
same
yeah.
bad time, same bad channel.
I think that's it. Great. Right, clean it up, Greg. Do it once more, and then we'll go.
I think we just need
Sincerely, Neal.